right all over, aren't we?
There you go. And we're live. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Whiskey Charlie, the Wargame Chat, our live show every month on YouTube. I'm Mo from Mo's Game Table, and joining me tonight are my co-hosts, everyone's favorite Gimp with the Limp, Gimpy Gamer, Nate Rogers.
Nice to see you guys.
And everybody's favorite guy from, what is that show again? No Enemies Here? Dan Pancaldi, the man from No Enemies Here, gives us all of our Wargaming news. How's it going, Dan?
Good. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. That's it.
Good. I'm sorry.
I was waiting.
Sorry. That's what I was waiting for. And
I'm
today
sorry,
we have a very special guest, Mr. Harold Buchanan, who is a not only a wargame designer, but a very prolific podcaster as well. So thanks for joining us, Harold. Really appreciate having you on the show.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I kind of feel like I'm on the I don't know what was it called, the Mount Rushmore of war games with you guys, and all our heads presented together. So very exciting. Hey, that's a good-looking young man there.
There you go.
He's
doing,
getting
buddy?
ready to go to bed, and he wanted to come say hello. Say good night. No, you gotta just say good night. Don't hear you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, there you go. go to mommy. Yes, the camera works. Go to mommy. But
He just said something bad about Canada, I think.
You know, Harold,
He said, "Ain't sorry."
your voice, you're the Mel Torme of podcast, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You're the
Yeah,
Velvet
absolutely.
Fog.
The
Yes.
Velvet
Yes.
Fog.
I appreciate that. I'm glad
Yes,
you recognize it,
absolutely.
Dan.
And I say that wholeheartedly.
That's sweet of you to say that, and I appreciate it. I was telling Mo that I admire his sound quality and his voice. He does a nice job too.
Yeah, it's all in the mic, man. It's all in the mic. You got to get right up on the mic. Shut up, Dan.
I don't even have
Say
a
it. Say it right now. Sorry.
mic. Sorry.
But
So-
it's great having you on, Harold. We've been wanting to get you on, and thankfully now with everybody kind of stuck at home, we're trying to do a couple more extra shows. We're still nowhere near you though. 20 shows. Talk about that massive dump of podcasts you did.
Yeah. Dump is a good word, Mo. I think.
In a good way. In a good way.
No, look, it's all about the people that I interview, and so my spring break just happened to coincide with the first week I was locked in, and so I just decided to reformat my show, do it in a way that was simple, and a way where I could interview a bunch of people in very short order and reduce the production. Right, as you guys know, right, part of the tyranny of doing these sorts of things is how much do you produce it after you record it, and which I love the live show for that reason, right? I mean, you guys just kind of you get what you end up doing live.
Yeah.
But I did that, and I just started talking to people, and it was awesome. And we set a few ground rules, right? We set the ground rules about we're not going to talk about the issues of the day. And I got to tell you, that was mostly therapy for me, because in the early days of this thing, I watched a ton of news. I watched my stock portfolio crash to the ground.
Yeah.
I watched absolutely, and I just read about how the Earth's fall, the world's coming to an end, and I watched plenty of news and CNN and Bloomberg and BBC, and all of them were just negative, and it took a toll on me, and so I just started talking about other stuff and recording it, right? So that's where it all came from, but
Now, Harold,
at the same time as I called around, I found some sadness, right? I found other people that are kind of dealing with this thing in their own ways, but I just realized how important it is in the midst of this sort of crisis, and something I'd never really thought about, but just to call a friend and offer them some words of encouragement and talk about something other than, right,
Sure.
the issues of the day. So I had a great time doing it. It was good fun.
well, Harold, you should stop watching American news and watch Canadian news. You're going to be happy.
Yeah, I did, but I was tired of hearing about poutine and
Sorry.
I'll tell you, Harold, my wife and I actually started doing something similar. We call it the quarantine diaries, but it doesn't have anything to do with, like, our first show. We kind of talked about it, but the rest of them, we just talk about whatever the hell's on our mind at the moment. And it was just extra content to put out there, so people who are stuck indoors have something else to listen to. And we let everyone know, like, hey, this is just us BSing about whatever the hell, we're thinking about. One time we were talking about relationships. Another time we've got one we're going to do ghost stories. And I forget what another one we did was, but we've just talked about, like, every little random topic just to try to uplift everybody, kind of put something positive out there.
Yeah.
instead of all the
Absolutely.
negativity.
And Nate, you guys probably experienced the same thing. And by the way, I've seen your wife in the video. She's lovely and does a great job. She has a great personality. I don't know why I'm not on here with her instead of you punks. But
She'll come in. She'll come in.
She's delightful. But at the same time, I found it to be therapeutic for myself, right? That just talking about this stuff can help change your mindset and talking about something other than the issues of the day.
No,
Yeah.
I fully get you. Because, all right, in my neighborhood, now I'm not trying to talk about the stuff, but when people walk by, that's all they talk about. What's going on or how depressed they are, how upset they are, and it's just piling on the depression, and it just brings the mood down for everyone.
Now, man, what else are you going to talk about now? I mean, what?
War games.
Canada.
Movies.
With who? With
Canada.
With Fifi across the street?
Well, the thing is, it's just one of those things where it's become such a dominant topic, and it's understandable because it's on the news all the time, but you can't let the news dictate how your mindset is. And if you do, you're going to just go up a wall. So it's you know what? It is what it is. The virus is here. Everyone's been dealing with it, and we are dealing with it, and we're going to get through it, and we're going to move on, and life will return back to normal. That's what you have to look forward to. Is you can't let the other stuff, dictate your mindset.
Yeah, and I've gotten to a place where I can absorb some news, and I want to. Right, I'm a news hound. I love to watch the news, and my stock portfolio, I bought like a madman when it came off, so I'm back to okay. So I'm going to survive. So that helps, right? And I think we kind of understand. We have a different perspective on this than we did at day one. So.
Sure.
And I'm happy to talk about it here if you guys want to. As a matter of fact, I'm happy to give medical advice, and I'm not a doctor.
Well, you know what?
Did you stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night? At least?
They were fresh, though.
Harold, as a matter of fact, my daughter, which is on the show right now, Celia.
Hello, Celia.
We were talking about you. Her name is Cece. Can everybody say hello, Cece?
Hello, Cece.
Hey, Cece.
Thanks. And we were talking about you, Harold. And I said, Harold, he's an investor, something. I don't know what your full title is. And she says she'd like to invest $2,000. Can you help her?
Yeah, if she'll send it to me, I promise in 10 years that she'll make a nice profit.
I'll tell you what, if she buys, 5 copies of Case Blue and holds on to them for another 5 years.
That's true.
There you go.
That's
you
true.
You can't even get 5 copies.
Yeah.
Well, you might.
No way. You couldn't track it down.
So that's why I said 5 for $2,000. It's going to cost you.
You're talking about the news, Harold, and I found out something very strange here recently. My little boy, he'd actually got grounded from his tablet, so we had taken it away, and he was having to just watch his TV. And he, for some reason, is obsessed with Fox News. He knows where the Disney Channel is. He knows where all the cartoon channels are. But every time we would come in, he would have it cut to Fox News. And his favorite is Tucker Carlson. He'll sit there, and he's 5 years old, and he'll sit there and just watch like he's enraptured. I don't get it, but more power to you, son.
The funny thing is, I can relate to that. Not from experience personally, but firsthand experience. But I don't recall it. My parents told me I used to sit down in front of the television the same way with Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite would be on the news, and I'd be like,
the guy's a legend, man.
And I was 2 years old, and I'd be like, and you're like, you didn't understand, but you know what it is? He probably has that perception that he's being talked to personally. That's
his tone.
He's made that connection,
Yeah, absolutely.
I could see that. Yeah.
It's funny, Dan, that you mentioned that your daughter was is here. My nephew, Chip Buchanan, is here. I see him in the comment section.
Well, how old's Chip?
Chip is was he sophomore, freshman in high school.
Does he make good money?
He's going to make good money.
Okay, can we get
no doubt about it? He's a bright young man.
Can we hook him up?
There's your $2,000 investment.
That's right. It'll cost $2,000, Dan. That's the dowry.
No problem.
See, we're making connections everywhere. This is what the show's all about.
Networking.
Exactly.
That's fun.
But, I was in high school. I would have been happy to have $2.
Let alone 2,000.
Yeah.
But one of the cool things is we were talking about, we mentioned about your podcast, and for those who are not aware, Harold has a really fantastic podcast called Harold on Games. He also has a website, conflictsimulations.com, that you can check out the website and listen to all the podcast episodes on, or you can listen to them on your favorite podcast app on your favorite device. You're coming up on a big milestone. Talk about that.
Yeah, I think we're at 97,000 downloads now, so we're almost at 100,000, which is pretty exciting, right? I mean, as you guys know, it feels good when you have somebody that actually listens to you, and 100,000. My mom, there's no way she could hit that button 100,000 times. My mom's probably at 20,000, I would expect. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. It's nice, right? It's nice. Yeah. Given that we don't get much compensation for this, but yeah, it's pretty cool. There's Sean. Sean's one of my big fans. He's always supportive. I appreciate that.
There you go. Harold on Games.
There it is. There's the logo. That's right.
Well, the whole key right there is to make sure that you don't run out, but you kind of take your time going through them and enjoying them.
Yeah.
You binge them all, and then you're like, what am I going to listen to now?
Right. We're pushing 50 shows now.
That's awesome.
So you got a lot of choices. If you haven't listened to it, you got a lot of choices.
You'll find that they add up pretty quick, because I remember I was excited when I first started my channel. I was like, oh wow, I've got 10 videos, I've got 50 videos, and now I've lost track. I'm somewhere in like 300 or 400.
Wow.
Videos uploaded, but just over the years it just adds up, and you kind of lose track after a while.
How do you keep from getting burnt out, Nate?
Yeah, man.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Have you had times where you just spent?
I will tell you, one of the things that helps for me is that I don't sit and focus on a single project at a time. So I'll usually have 2 or 3 going. So if I don't want to play and film this game, I've got another one on a different table that I'll film instead. So usually I have at least 3 going, 3 different projects. So if I'm really just kind of burnt on one, I can switch to another. Right. And kind of freshen things up a little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And plus in between that, I'll do the quarantine stuff, like with the wife I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that's fun. There's a tyranny, as Dan and Mo know as well. There's a tyranny to having a scheduled requirement to create these things, right? And it can really get you down. And for me, there's a seasonality too, because from kind of June to August or September, I would go out and that's when I would do the recordings face to face, right? I have a headset, and that's when we get the best sound. And that was nice, right? Because then I'd spend the next 6 months producing them. But I'm starting to rethink how I produce them and how much time I spend with all the cute music and transitions and stuff. I enjoy that part of it as well, and I like the way it sounds. But I think I can really. I think I can improve my production and timeliness if I just stop producing it so much.
Well, Harold, I'm curious. Can you run us through your equipment and how you produce stuff?
Yeah, I can. As a matter of fact, how about a little show and tell, Dan? You up for that?
Go. Yeah, I'm up for it.
Go crazy.
So everything's wired together. So give me a second here.
No problem. Gives me time.
See, now you got all this advertising here, Nate. You're a little out of the groove here.
What do you mean?
Look at Harold's wall. Look at Dan's wall.
I'm advertising for God. I got.
And look at my up on my shelf there.
That's right. I need some. There
you go. Nice
scenery
connection. So these are the headsets that I use. So Audio Technica.
Okay.
And just the quality of the mic's exceptional.
It is.
As I told you, I have a friend that did this for NPR, and she gave me, this is what she used, and so I replicated it and got 2 of those. And then I bought a Zoom 6. So let me show you what that is, what that looks like.
John says your stuff's wired together. His wife must have been over there. So I guess apparently his wife must connect everything together.
Plug together. So this is what I record everything on, right? So it's a remote mixer, right, in effect, but you can record as much as you want on there, and then it comes with other microphones. But I just plug the headsets in there,
and that's it.
And I could plug 6 in if I wanted to. I've never wanted to, but
so all your audio is recorded to that one object.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you transfer it onto the PC to do your editing and
you got it.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it, Nate. I do that. That's what I record everything to there. And it's all, you guys know as well that if you record 2 sets of audio and you do it on separate sources, that they don't match up, right?
No.
Yeah.
And so you get this weird echo unless you spend a million hours trying to refine exactly where they should match. When I record everything, like if I recorded 4 channels to that, they would all be in sync.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no work to do. And then Mo, you were mentioning Audacity. I upload everything to Audacity and manage it there. And Audacity's free and just a fantastic program.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I do. And I prefer to do that face to face. So most of the pictures that you'll see on my website of recordings are face to face with somebody where we both have the headphones on and we're recording into that device. And it's a great. The audio is terrific. I love the high audio quality.
Now the mics that you use is from the Zoom.
The mic that I use is from that headset.
That's
Okay. So you got 2 headsets, one for you, one for the interviewee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Dan, I prefer to do it face to face.
Yeah.
But this, the 5-packs that I've been doing those via Skype for the most part. And so the audio quality, in my opinion, sucks. I record my voice onto my Zoom. Oh, I thought you were talking about Zoom, different Zooms. You're correct. But when on these 5-packs, I've been doing recording my voice on my Zoom and the other party's voice in Audacity.
Right.
And then I have to match them up.
And
So you've got the 2 audio files and you have to line that. No, that is so horrible.
Mm.
I feel your pain on that one because I've
Absolutely,
tried that before.
Nate.
It's miserable. It is miserable to try to do that.
Now, I interviewed Liz Davidson, Nate, and she gave me a cool idea. And I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you at the start, if you'll be quiet and somebody claps,
mm-hmm.
right? That was a revelation for me.
I have a similar thing that I do, but since a lot of mine's all video, I will start the cameras and then cut on a light. So I'll have that light click. So I'll have a sound and the light coming on to give me an audio and a visual cue for all my different little levels. But yeah, that is a good idea to go with.
Yeah. Everybody claps that way. You can match up that one. You stay quiet, clap, and you find that sharp sound in the waveform, and you just kind of overlay them and go from there.
I'm learning.
Well,
I knew
you're
that
right,
if I came to Mount Rushmore, you guys would teach me something.
You're right to use the headphones because most of the headphones now have the the audio dampening stuff. So it's
noise canceling.
Designed, noise canceling. That's what I'm looking for. It's blocking out the other stuff, but it's picking up your stuff. So even if you're sitting there right next to the person wearing the headset, would especially cut that out. I had huge problems at WBC because I'd had the single mic, and even though we're just talking right to each other, it's picking up all that surround sound.
Sure.
Yeah.
And also I think it makes conversation more intimate because you're literally in that direct connection with the other person, and you can hear what they're saying perfectly and they can hear what you're saying perfectly, and it makes the conversation quality increase in that regard. So it's a much better investment, I think, to do that. And your podcast is not only the quality of the guests that you've had on are fantastic, but the production is just amazing.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
I've got a question, Harold. Where were you born? Where were you born?
I'm not willing to tell you that, Dan.
No, where, not when. Where?
You asked for my social security number earlier, and I'm not giving you that either.
Hey, who's this?
Well,
Jeff Buchanan.
Like
Ask Harold about Civil War memorabilia.
That's my brother, and he's trying to start trouble. Is there any way we can kick him off this? Kick him out of YouTube?
So he's talking about the uniform you wore while you were there, right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay, I've got another question. Another question.
What's the last four?
All right,
So, I mean, Harold, I know you play guitar, right?
Yes.
And you own a couple of guitars, right?
6.
All right, then.
Wow.
And are they all the same mark, your guitars?
No, they're different. And I can play all 6 at the same time. And on another show, I'll share that.
Yeah, please do.
But here we go. This is the Butte.
Well, that's a fine-looking guitar, Harold.
Thank you, Dan.
Now, what music do you gravitate towards? Are you a folk guy when you play your guitar? Or you just
Bob Dylan. That's all I do is Bob Dylan stuff.
Seriously?
No, I'm just kidding. I can't stand Bob Dylan. No, I like classic rock. So Zeppelin. But you know what I've been working on recently is there's so much good stuff that I've overlooked my entire life on Metallica.
Oh,
so much good acoustic stuff in Metallica.
Oh, you're just now catching on to Metallica?
So, I mean, that's what you practice on acoustic?
I have been, yeah. I do all kinds of stuff, Dan. You'd be surprised.
No, I want to know.
Yeah. No, I do all sorts of things.
So
Sean's trying to help you out here.
Taylor fan? You're not a Carole King fan? You don't do that folky stuff, man?
Sean's going to ask for my favorite sports team in a minute. So when I had my own business and I was running a hedge fund, I had a partner that was wonderful, and he and I worked together on stuff. And but you're managing these accounts, and we ran $1 billion at the peak of the hedge fund. So you're taking care of a lot of people's money, and you're worried about it, right? So we had one of our guys was trying to get into an account because my partner wasn't around. And he said, I don't know if I should do this. He said, they just asked me what my partner's favorite sports team is. Now, of course, it's the LA Lakers, right? And so you can't hide it. It wasn't a very good security question. Mother's maiden name is much better.
Yeah. And then we've got...
I can't spell my mother's maiden name.
Oh, wow.
It's a German name. I've never been able to remember how to spell that damn
Jones or Smith or something, isn't it? No.
Oh, Robert Carroll is here instead of fighting through inclement weather. Robert, thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm going to guess right now that Robert is up in Delaware, Oklahoma area, because that's what I'm looking at on my radar here, because they've got storms running through their area. We're going to get a derecho later, so there'll be a big windstorm here.
Stay safe, Robert.
Stay safe,
for you, buddy.
Yeah, we're going to give away a tank duel.
Yes, we are.
To somebody here. Not going to give it to my brother because he's creating problems for us, but we'll give it at random to somebody. So Mo, if you would pick somebody at random after this is over, I would appreciate it. And if we can find them, I'd be happy to send them a tank duel.
Yeah, no, we'll pick one here. We'll actually do it during the show at some point here.
Oh, there you go.
And that way, I'll give the contact information so that way they can get.
I didn't want to give you another task during the show. I know you're pretty busy. And then you have the mute button to mute Dan too, right?
Yeah, I can. You want me to kick him?
It is unfortunate that we're probably not all going to be able to get together this year and do that tank duel big game that we.
Oh man, I was so looking forward to that.
Yeah, we were planning on that, but you know what? We can still do that.
I get.
Want to do it online?
Vassal.
Like a Vassal version of it.
We'll have to do a Vassal streamed, like at least a 4, if not an 8-player game. That would be wild to do.
That's a good idea. And Mike Berticelli was the designer, and he is a great teacher. So he would be a great guy to pull into that.
Nice. So we'll have to definitely check that out. And then Mark, he's also in Joplin, Missouri, watching the weather.
Man,
that's where Robert is. And hey, guess what? We just made another connection. You guys are in Joplin. So there you go. Now you did not know that before. Now you know. So now you got wargaming partners now. Real easy. Just for being on the show. How awesome is that?
Link them up. Free of charge.
So Harold, I got another question that maybe you can answer.
How much does he weigh?
No.
You have to guess, Dan.
What's your email password?
Okay, well, here's my last question. If you don't answer it, I'm getting off the show. So, what's your next project? What's going on in your brains in terms of war design?
Hey, a valid question.
That's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One is I've got I'm working on the South China Sea game, Flashpoint South China Sea GMT games.
Yeah,
and it's turned out to be awesome. It's taken a lot of time and a lot of iterations, but it's really turned out to be great. And so we're finished with the 2-player version, and we're working on a solo bot. Actually,
good stuff.
Jason Carr of GMT, super developer Jason Carr at GMT is working on it. He's wonderful, and he's working on the single player, and then then we'll be ready to go. Who knows how this crisis of the day impacts printing schedules and all of those things. So, that may delay it a little bit, but I'm pretty much finished with that. So that'll be nice to get that out of my hands.
So past that, what's past that?
Well, let me tell you what I'm thinking about, Dan. We've been talking about doing some role-playing games, just playing some role-playing games, right? Mm-hmm. I had a crazy idea. So there's a game called Comrades, and I can actually share this on YouTube. Let's take advantage of the medium here.
Sure.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with everybody the game Comrades. And this is for $15. You can pick up a PDF of this game, and it's basically a game where you what do you do? Well, you kind of figure out you're a rebel, and so the game is set in any rebellion is the idea. And so I think it's a cool idea. And my thought was, when I first bought the game about a year ago, because it was kickstarted, I thought it was a great idea, and I said, what if we did the American Revolution? And we set up a game, and I'm happy to DM it or GM it or whatever we call it. But running this game basically as a role playing game where you basically are Sons of Liberty in Boston, and you're doing all the stuff that the rabble rousers did, right, to start trouble and to create mobs every now and then, and to fight the British and to curse out the redcoats and run and all the things that you would do as a rebel. So I'm looking forward to that. I just shared a really cool old map of Boston that I just found today that I'm excited about. It's 1769. So it's in that period between the French and Indian War and the American Revolution, or the War of American Aggression. And that's not what it's called, Dan. I was just saying that for your benefit. But the
I was waiting for him to say something. He didn't
no response.
I'm listening.
I think sometimes, Dan, I ask questions and you don't listen to me, and that hurts my heart.
And I'm listening.
Okay. So the idea is to put together a game where you're, that sort of thing, right? You're Sons of Liberty and you're in Boston and you're in that funky environment, and you're trying to figure out how to get the country fired up to do something, and take some action and get out. And so that's one thing I'm excited about. I've got some ideas for games that I haven't decided. One of the problems I have, Dan, and I don't know, Dan, if you have this same problem, but one of the problems I have is that I have 100 ideas and I have the time to work on one or two of them.
I'm ADD. I beat you, man.
Squirrel.
Yeah, and you're not the only one with ADD. Right?
Harold, can I ask you something along those lines?
Yeah,
something
please.
You mentioned earlier. You mentioned that the solitaire component of the game was being worked on currently, and something that I've kind of noticed is that so many, especially war gamers now, expect to have that solitaire version of the game, right in there. And I think a lot of developers and designers are trying to maybe shoehorn in solitaire gameplay that may not be warranted for the game itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you kind of agree with that? That they're pushing it because people want it and they expect it, but it isn't necessarily the best for the game itself because the game might not be conducive to solitaire play.
Yeah, I agree. So we're stuck in this weird loop, right? Where the game designers want to sell more games, and we have people that want to play games. There's Mike Berticelli, the designer of Tank Duel.
We were just talking about him.
That's right. Now Mike's going to set that game up for us. I think he's a wonderful teacher. He'd be great to.
Nice.
So we there's a weird thing going on, right? It's a weird loop where we want to sell more games. There clearly is a segment of the population that either because they have to or they choose not to sit around each other and play games, want to play solo. And so you see an explosion of games that have a solo component. But most of them, as you said, are bolted on after the game's designed, right? They're an afterthought. And so, I think in coin, that's been the case, and actually so much so that a separate designer does a lot of the solo work, the solo design work in Coin. And so you see that difference, but we're starting to see in Coin, especially with Bruce Mansfield's work, where he did the solo and the game. He actually thought about it as he was designing the game and made the game simpler in certain ways to make it more soloable. So that's the first time we're seeing that in Coin. Then you've got designers like John Butterfield, who's never done a Coin game, right? And John Butterfield, when he starts a game, he starts it as a solo game, right? I mean, his first design. So anything you touch that's John Butterfield that has a solo component is brilliantly thought out, right? It's the way that you want it to be. If you play solo.
Sure.
Yeah, some of my favorite games are Butterfield games.
Yeah.
No offense to present company, but I mean the man does excellent work.
Look, you gotta pay him his respects because he's awesome.
Yeah. Enemy Action Ardennes. I mean that's right there at the top of my list.
3 games in one.
And that's a solo game that you could play 2-player if you wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to this other stuff that's 2-player, but you can play solo if you wanted.
And I'm not trying to hate on Mike or anything, but I kind of felt that way with Tank Duel, that the solitaire component was tacked on afterwards. And the thing is I do have the mixed feelings about it, because I, who play solitaire constantly and would not have got the game otherwise, appreciate the solitaire component. But after playing the game, I'm like, yeah, this game is absolutely designed and structured and perfect for multiplayer play.
Right.
You know, it's that game. But I appreciate the effort that they took putting it there.
Like I would say, it's a wargamer's party game is what it is, really.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think it is. I think to get the most out of Tank Duel, you play it with 4 or 6 other people. And so what Mike did was he created a solo bot that allows people that choose to play it solo, either because they want to learn or that's in their environment. But the best experience is 4 or 6 people around the table yelling at each other and laughing.
Yeah. It's kind of like sex. You know, you can do it by yourself, but you really need a partner.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. We're okay with that too.
I'll keep the rest of the show above.
So Dean says more AMREV games, changing the subject. No, but Dean's saying more AMREV games. So anything expected aside from that RPG you were talking about? Right. Anything else that you're thinking about with the American Revolution?
Well, you know, there are a couple of things that are in my mind, but once again, you know, what's the priority? I have to answer it, and I don't think I can. But Campaigns of 1777, that was a Decision Games release this past, I guess the beginning. Well, it's at the end of last year. Yeah. So Strategy and Tactics 316. Once again, I like it because it's biblical. There you go. Very nice. Thank you, Mo. I appreciate that. So that game was a lot of fun to make, and I could do that on the Southern campaign. And I've talked a little bit with Gene at GMT, and they're interested if I decide to make it. I probably wouldn't do that with Decision. And then there's another game that's in my head related to the American Revolution. And that is that before the American Revolution, right? And I was talking about the role-playing game, but there's a lot of chaos coming out of the French and Indian War on the way to the American Revolution. And if you were in business in any way, whether you were shipping or you were a merchant or you were in the rum trade or whatever, and you were in Boston, you had to balance a lot of different things, right? I mean, you had sometimes dual loyalties. Who do you pay? Who do you side with? And I thought, what a cool game it would be if players could basically operate as if they were merchants of some kind in Boston, and they were trying to walk that fine line, right? Of not pissing off the British, but also not pissing off the Patriots.
True.
And trading, and you know, there were tons of black market goods. Tea was a black market good for a long time.
Oh, I didn't
I
realize
argue that tea is what actually solidified the Americans in the American Revolution. There were tons of agreements not to import, non-import agreements, so that the colonists wouldn't bring in British goods of certain kind with certain taxes. But you know, side deals everywhere and money flowing around.
It just sounds like a really sleazy game, Harold.
That's what I love, Dan.
It sounds like a mob, like almost like a mafia game, or like a Sopranos type of thing in the Revolution setting. And I think it sounds really intriguing. It's because you really do have to balance. Okay, I need to eat. I need to pay bills. You know, I need to make money, but I need to not piss these guys off. Not piss these guys off. You know.
I like I love games like Pax Pamir is really hot now, right? But before that, Porfiriana, where you decide how you want to be aligned during the game, and you may receive a benefit, or you may pay a price for the wrong alignment at any point in time. And frankly, in the middle of the game, if you decide it's better to align with the British, you do it, right? You just change. And that universe, that environment where the target moves and you have to adjust your game so that you can't sit down and have a strategy and then execute it because the world changes in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
There's Ken T. Ken T's working on a
People Power,
a Philippines coin game, as a matter of fact. Hello, Ken T.
See, I like to hear stuff like this because there is so much over and just indulgence in certain aspects of history, and there's so much history back there that could have games made on it. But how many games do we have about the Normandy beach landings, or the Eastern Front, or whatever those aspects? You know what I'm talking about. There's so many games about those very few subjects, and very few games about all this other history, and there's a buttload of it, out there.
Well, that's where a guy like David Thompson fits in perfectly. He's like, let's see. Oh, wait, the Boy Scouts were in a fight against the, whoever in 1961. We're going to make a game out of it. It's like no one knows about it until he does a game on it. And it's like, oh, cool. I didn't even know anything about this.
But it's not even just that. It's not even just that part of history. The guy does great with stuff that he just thinks up off the top of his head with For What Remains.
Sure.
Excellent game. I think wargamers do not give enough attention to those fantasy sci-fi type games that have their own backstory, and he created the fluff for it. And I was actually reading the fluff, going, "Okay, I want you to flesh this out. I want to know what happens."
Wow,
like he was really good at that. I'm looking forward to the production copy of that.
I'm waiting to see this copy. I think we need to talk to GMT about this. This sounds really intriguing. Joe Bestfan says he's designing a State of Siege game, style game, about a man trapped in his house with his wife and 2 college-age daughters during a lockdown.
Yeah.
Like you, I'm probably living that right now, and that sounds horrifying.
And that's exactly what John said. He says the horror. But yeah, no, that sounds really cool. I like the idea, like you're saying, going back to RPG. I'm not a big RPG guy myself. I've played some in the past. I like them, but I really do like the setting you're talking about. That would be really, really interesting to explore.
Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of back alley stuff happening there.
And you could do that with any part of history. Remember, Mo, we talked about a kind of fleshed out version of Ambush where you had control of a single soldier and you kind of walked him through all the different things that could happen, and he could level up or die or be promoted, or, whatever. Yeah, same principle that I assume Harold's talking about with that one.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
There's a game, one of Napoleon's grognards. I don't know who does it, but it's like an RPG. You level up. You have love interests. You duel with, what's that game called, man?
I could have told you if you hadn't asked.
Yeah.
Shit.
Google
Waterloo?
It might be set in Waterloo.
It's.
I can't remember. I know what you're talking about. It's a card game, isn't it?
I think so. Does anybody in chat know that game? Because
anybody in chat knows the game, Dan will give you his undying gratitude.
Absolutely.
It's not really a card game. It's got like player aids.
Yeah, but it's got cards. I think if I remember correctly, it was like a couple of decks in it.
Clash of Honor, Legion of Honor.
Legion of Honor. Yeah. It's on my Amazon wish list to get, like with all the other hundreds of games that I've picked out that I haven't been able to get yet. But yeah, that one was one of those.
Now we'll come back to some war game design here in a second, but I do want to step out just a second because we do have someone bringing up a question here. Nick was asking about what's up with ST HistCon this year, because for those who don't know it, Harold runs the ST Historical Games Convention in San Diego every year around in the November timeframe around Veterans Weekend. So what's the status, do you think, right now? At least what's the latest?
Well, look, the con business is going to be odd this summer for obvious reasons. The big conventions. I think there's a lot of confusion about the business of conventions, and my convention is tiny relative to an Origins or Gen Con. But those big conventions, they can't. They know they're not going to have their conventions, but they can't call it now.
Yeah.
There's a clause in the contract that we refer to as force majeure, act of God. And Dan, you probably understood that because I think it's Latinish French. But the idea is that you have the right to get your deposit back. You get your deposit back if by some act of God you can't perform. Right? They can't perform. They can't allow you in that thing. And the idea was that if there's an earthquake and the convention center falls, they can't provide the convention center, so you get your deposit back and nobody can sue anybody, right? So imagine Gen Con or Origins have made these massive deposits for space. And if they can't cancel now, they have to act like they're going to go through with it. Now, at some point in Ohio or Indiana, the governors will say, we're not going to have gatherings of more than 50 people for the rest of the year, or whatever it is, or maybe 30 days at a time. As soon as that happens, then Gen Con and Origins attorneys will write a little letter and say, looks like force majeure, we're out, give us our deposits back. And then they'll call it off. But until we get close, they can't. Now I have a similar situation, but I put in a small deposit for the San Diego Historical Games Convention. But over time, I have to put bigger deposits to pay for it. And as time passes, I'm going to have basically $10,000 at risk if I keep waiting and putting my deposits in. So I can't play this game like Origins and Gen Con are. I'm at $10,000 risk if I wait. And right now I'm in for $1,000, which is my original deposit. And so, I'm transparent about this stuff. I just want to make sure everybody understands. The reality is I don't want to lose $10,000 because people don't feel like getting on airplanes or traveling or staying in a hotel, right?
Sure.
So I think it's highly unlikely that will continue. And probably what will happen is where they ask for an additional deposit, right, above the $1,000 I've given them. At that point, I'll probably say, I just want to cancel the contract and I'll eat the $1,000.
Really?
But if I keep putting money in, then it'll be $10,000.
Yeah.
And it's just not a good bet in this environment.
I mean, come on, they should be decent to you. I mean, just morally speaking.
I was just about to say that.
They understand the situation. They know you can't just throw money at them because it's going to get eaten up, and more than likely you can't hold it. And it's not, while they might be legally okay to keep your money, I don't think they're ethically in the right to just take your $1,000 and say, well, act of God happened, but contract, blah, blah, blah. Like, if they want to keep your business for next year,
right,
they should do the right thing and say, here. Or I could even see splitting the difference with you. Like, we'll eat part of it, you eat part of it, we'll call it a day. I would think that would be cool. I'm not trying to pry in your personal finances, but I think that's wrong.
Harold,
no, Nate, I think you're right, and that's how it should work, right? But the unfortunate truth is that I've dealt with this hotel for 4 or 5 years, and my confidence in their ability to act fairly and ethically is pretty low.
Really?
So it's unfortunate.
So they've been a good facility, but on the money there's no negotiation. So and the contract is extremely one-sided, which it often is, right? I don't have any power. They have the power when we set these contracts up. So I can't negotiate fair contracts. I don't have any ability to do that. And so in the end, it's I just have to protect my money and according to the terms of the contract. And I'll have a discussion with them. And if they want to make an offer that increases our ability to be flexible and make choices, that's fine. But if they want me to put up more deposit, I'm just not going to do it.
Now, Harold, I don't know if I was discussing with you at some point, don't you teach ethics in business? Don't you have a class?
I do, Dan. Ethics, business ethics.
It just sounds like such a contradiction, ethics in business.
Well, as I told you, Dan, that's what we're working on.
Yeah, well.
To fix it.
What can I say?
There's a difference between what's legally right and what's morally and ethically right.
Morals.
Yeah.
No, not screw morals. It's something decent they could do. As an example, would be to say, "Hey, due to circumstances, we can't return your deposit, but next year we'll cut you a discount on it, or we'll let this count as the first part of your deposit next year,
Yeah.
when we've recovered better." Even something like that. So they're still keeping it now, but you get to kind of recoup some of it later. That would be something ethically, I think, would be correct.
Yeah,
You
Nate,
want to get that repeat business.
I think that's a very sophisticated view. I don't think they see out that far.
Yeah, no.
But frankly, if it were you or I, based on what you just said, I think you and I are on the same page. Let's make a gesture of some kind. Let's negotiate a new deal of some kind, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
No,
It's not your fault.
You know what? Even if they don't fill the hotel when Harold was supposed to be there, it's a write-off for them. They're still laughing. I mean, who cares about Harold?
Well, I mean, you got to remember too, this is an incredibly unique situation across the world. This is not like, hey, this town or this state got hit with something. The entire world has been affected in this way. So you'd think that a lot of businesses would be like, you know what, we can't do it this year. We're not going to be allowed to by our states, by our own governments are not going to allow us to have, gatherings of larger than say 50 people or something. So it's not feasible to do this, but maybe this year, hey, would you consider doing a convention of maybe 50 people, to try to keep your business there, maybe just the local people. And then next year we'll give you a discount or whatever, because we know that you're limited, but we don't know. We don't know how it's going to play out. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all works.
Hotels are run by the mob. You think the mob is going to give you a deal?
Well, I mean, you said it's in San Diego, right?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
it's a lot bigger city, big venue. I'm sure they have the mindset that they're not as worried about the little guy, or when you do it this direction, the little guy, because he's replaceable. But he's going to have a memory, and he's going to remember that, and he's going to tell people. And while he might not be, the make it and break it, his friends might be, or the people they talk to might be. Word spreads. People are going to remember how businesses handled, individuals during this time period.
Yeah.
Were they part of the problem, or are they part of the solution?
Yeah. No, Nate, you're right on it. And I like any opportunity where somebody can call me the little guy. I think that's great. For reasons Dan and I talked about earlier. But yeah, I think you're right. And I think coming out of this mess, they're going to be heroes, and then they're going to be people that there's going to be a lynch mob of some kind. I hate to use the term lynch mob, but
yeah.
There'll be winners and losers.
There'll be a reckoning, shall we say, a business reckoning.
Let me let's see. I wanted to change the topic to something a little more upbeat, and I forgot what it was. What was it, Dan? What were we going to talk about? We were going to talk about
Something Canadian.
I think it was. Is your hat a herringbone material? Is that what that is? Herringbone, or is it calico?
Yeah.
I don't know, Harold.
Okay, well, check with your wife or girlfriend. You have a girlfriend, right? Check with her. She'll know.
I have a fiance. Excuse me.
A fiance.
Yeah.
So you got a girl to say yes? Congratulations.
That's a conditional yes. A fiance is a conditional yes.
Oh, that's great. Yep. That's great.
I am impressed. You gave her the ring and everything? Like she's wearing the ring?
Yeah.
In public?
I don't remember.
It's just too easy, man. I'll just poke it at you a little bit.
Now, I do have a question for you on, the Flashpoint South China Sea.
Yes.
You said it's pretty much done at this point, but with the current situation, that's constantly evolving with China, and not only the current, virus thing, but there's always talk about, hey, the Americans right now, the Navy, with everyone being sick on some of these ships, will the Chinese get a little frisky in the South China Sea, make any moves to Taiwan? Have you thought about maybe adding anything or changing anything that you currently have in the game to reflect the current status of what's going on in the world?
Yeah, I did add a pandemic card, and the question is, who does it benefit, right? Who gets the benefit of the card, the Chinese, or the U.S.? And I don't, it's not clear. Some days I think it's the U.S. and some days I think it's China. But I think the tough part about doing a game like this is that it's such a hot topic. It's changing all the time, right? So I think there'll be updates. I think that we'll probably make updates later. It just depends on how much people are interested in the system and how they like it. I'm excited about it. Other people are excited about it, but it doesn't matter. It depends on how people enjoy it when they play it. So, so we'll see. But hopefully,
Now that's the one that's just completely card driven, right?
yes, yeah. There's a map and it's got blocks, but it's
Cards and
all
cubes.
cards. Yeah.
It was the sequel or the spinoff from Breaking the Chains. Is that the one I'm thinking of?
No. Well, no. You're thinking of the other South China Sea game from Compass. This is going to be one of those lunchtime series games.
Yeah.
Like Fort Sumter. It's
so Nate, you should be able to play it you should be able to play it in 20 minutes, call it 45 minutes for Dan, but I think it's the kind of game that you'll be able to get through quickly.
So South China Seas is like a lunchtime game, Harold.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've been playing it, I actually, the more experience you have, the longer you take just pondering the terrible
right
tough choices, but you can easily play it in 30 minutes and we get play times under that. So,
well, I have to buy it.
There you go. I love it, Dan. Yeah, we're going to get you a promotional copy of the next printing of South China Sea.
No, you don't have to do that.
Okay. I know I don't have to. I appreciate that. But Dan, I wanted to bring up, there was something I wanted to talk about, and I wish Volko was here. I don't see him in the chat, probably because we kicked him out last time because he was causing trouble. Remember that?
Yeah.
But Dan, you had a podcast with Volko, and it has one of my favorite series of questions and discussions of any, and it wasn't a podcast, it was a live feed from YouTube, right?
I don't.
And you got into an argument with Volko about how to track down somebody, right?
Okay.
And I'm just going to remind you that he works for an organization that tracked down Che Guevara and killed him, that tracked down Bin Laden and killed him.
Those are just names.
And then equipped the Mexican police and government to find El Chapo twice. And you were skeptical about his process. You were saying that doesn't work, Volko. And then my favorite part was at the end. You said, "I just snipe him. I'd snipe him. I'd snipe him."
And they're also known for. They're going to be known for the group that also catches Duce. So
no, but it's look. You have to understand my mindset. I'm.
There's a method to this madness.
Well,
there is.
We here in Canada, in this vast land, we don't meet many military people who work for the CSIS, that's our CIA, I guess, or our FBI. I don't even know what it is. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when someone comes up to me and says, "Yeah, I teach at the CIA," and he's all cute and like Volko, all bouncy and cute, it's like
Volko bouncy and cute.
Yeah, he's bouncy and cute. It's like, what are you kidding me? You work for the CIA? Come on, you slap him on the shoulder. This and that. But no, this guy's serious. And the thing is that I remember once when I was ribbing Volko about the CIA, and Volko says, "I'm retired," and I'm like, "Come on, it's like the mob. You're never retired from the CIA." Harold emails me, "Can you shut up?"
Dan, I got a question. When you say you're going to just snipe them, do you have a lot of experience with the sniper rifles there, buddy? You're picking off a lot of people at a few hundred yards?
I won't divulge my secrets. I'm like Volko.
He's played Call of Duty, so he's figuring he can count on the kill streak.
That's right.
He's got the practice.
That was so good. I enjoyed that, Dan. Thank you for.
No, thank you, Harold.
Then we have a question here. A question from Joachim Kehoe. A question for Harold. Who would you most like to interview next for Harold on Games?
Well, there are a handful of people that I've talked about interviewing. David Doctor, who did Guns, Dice, and Butter, is a great podcast and had a big influence on me. And so he and I have exchanged emails. I'd like to interview him. Hard to get the two of us together at any single point in time, but I think that would be fun. I've always wanted to interview Roger McGowan, and I interviewed him this past fall, I guess. And so I've got about 3 hours of tape with him on, and I need to turn that into a podcast. And that's amazing, right? I mean, Roger's the artist that's done, squad leader box.
He's done everything.
The Liberty or Death box behind you is Roger, right? So he's extraordinary, and he's touched tons of different companies, and from Avalon Hill to modern day GMT. So he was great, and there's a bunch to be done there. And I'm always trying to break out, right? I'm trying to find something different that isn't just the people that we see all the time on these podcasts and see in podcasts, right? That makes sense. Like what we listen to on these podcasts. So people that are different, people that have different jobs. I interviewed a couple of game store owners. I've enjoyed that, and that was kind of an interesting angle. But I think there's all kinds of different angles to this that we should approach.
Now, Harold, your 3-hour interview with Roger B. McGowan, are you planning on like breaking that down to 1 hour, or are you going to leave it 3 hours or make 2 parts kind of thing?
Yeah, Dan, I think it'll be 2 parts. But that only takes us through like 1980. So I think there's probably another. I think it's a 4-parter.
That's awesome. That's just that's history. That for me, that's history, man.
Yeah, no, he is history, and it was editor of Fire and Movement. He's editor of C3I magazine. He's all over it. So I'd like to do that. I'd also like to do some things that are themed around not individuals but companies. I'd like to do a 2 or 3-part, 4-parter on SPI, one on Avalon Hill, Game Designer Workshop, but a number of companies that we're all interested in. It'd be nice to hear their story.
Yeah.
So what, you would just talk to like the owner and maybe some of their designers or developers?
Yeah. I'd probably I'd try to start with founders and then just talk to the key people that have either designed for them or run the company over time.
That's not a bad idea, because you really don't hear from those people very much.
Yeah.
I mean, you get Gene's stuff when he puts out his newsletter, which is appreciated because not a whole lot of companies do that.
Right.
But you don't hear about as much of the behind the scenes stuff. You know what I mean? So that would be an interesting aspect to cover.
Good. Yeah, I'd like to do more of that. I think that could be fun.
And Harold,
I love Gene's email. Right. I mean, you talk about transparent. He lays it out there, and he
lays it bare. Yeah.
And I was going to ask Harold, how far does Gene go back with the Jim Dunnigans and all that, with the Roger B. McGowans? Is he there?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think he was a young man during the later stages of Avalon Hill and SPI, but he was a big part of it.
Okay, very interesting.
He was in the hobby at the time, but he's got, Gene's got a bunch of awards. He's got some of those. What's the old wargame award? What was it called?
Charles S. Roberts.
Charles S. Roberts, yeah.
He's got a bunch of Charles S. Roberts from the 90s. And so he's got serious design chops that we just don't see that much anymore. Hopefully we'll see with Mr. President, right? I know that would be excellent, but he's got some real street cred.
Yeah, he's a hard guy to nail down.
Yeah. Have you heard my podcast with him?
Yes, I heard. Yeah, you guys were eating bacon.
Yeah, we had breakfast.
I know.
He said his omelet, his scrambled eggs recipe came from Richard Berg. And I told him I was skeptical because it didn't have any random events.
And Jochen has another question. He says, question for everyone. Do you think there is a future place for war games in a connected augmented reality space? That's interesting.
I don't even understand the question.
Does he mean like VR? Where's it going? Just the internet?
Well, I think if you have like an augmented reality space, you have VR, and then you also have everybody's got their phones. Everyone's got connected on their phones. And could you have a war game that was like in a persistent type universe where people came in? This is at least what I'm taking from it, where people would go in and out of a game. It would be like kind of a constant game, or a long game where people can play on their phone, on their computer, on their laptop, whatever.
I've often thought that it would be fun to have, instead of Pokemon Go, you basically had, as you drove down the road, there would be some improved position with guys firing machine guns out of it, right?
That's great.
Nice.
That's great. I love it.
You're laughing at me, Dan, but I think this is a business.
I think it's great. I'm telling you, it's great.
We're doing a convoy in San Diego. I know Harold's behind me here. I'm going to set an ambush on this little rise over here because he's never going to see it coming. And then as he goes by, it's like his phone goes off. You're being ambushed. What do you do?
You just swerve the car from the highway, you know?
Yeah, just a slight liability issue.
Exactly.
A lot of
No,
wargamers,
goes into immediate
veterans.
action right there on I-5.
Yeah, they might have been shot at before.
Well, yeah.
Seeing it coming at them while they're driving might be a flashback.
Oops.
I have such a story that makes me look like an idiot. But like I said, I don't know much about this war stuff, the reality of it. So if I can take 2 minutes and tell you the story.
Minute 30.
Okay. Anyways, I was working out with this guy because I used to work out, right? And this guy was he's a mercenary type of guy. He's Israeli soldier, whatever, right? So he's picking up a 25-pound weight and trying to put it on the barbell, and I'm sneaking up behind him just as a joke. I swear, I never got so scared in my life. The guy turns around with this death grip and these eyes like Mortal Kombat, and I think I soiled myself. Like, oh my god, I'm sorry.
There's certain people you don't sneak up on, Dan.
I will never do that again. I swear I will never do that. I'll never survive in Mortal Kombat. Just the look killed me.
I'll tell you, some of the stuff actually sticks with you. My brother, he drove Hummers while we were overseas. Like, he was doing a lot of the driving when we were on a gun truck missions. And right after we had gotten back, he went out one evening to go pick up some Wendy's late night. And just out of force of habit, he cut off his lights and he drove down the center of the road, because that's what we did. It was a 2-lane road in one direction. So he's driving down the center of it. And if people got in his way, he, would rev the car at them, because that's what we did while we were overseas. And it didn't dawn on him until he was pulling back home. He's like, I'm home. I shouldn't be doing this now. Like, I need to have my lights on and I don't need to drive aggressively at the other motorists on the
I thought, what the hell? Wendy's where in Afghanistan? Wendy's or what?
We're really Americanizing the area now.
It really sticks with you. I told you guys before that when I got home, I could smell women before I could see them. It was the strangest thing. If we went out somewhere, I could smell a woman from 50 feet coming off.
The perfume.
And that lasted only a few days did you have that ability. But I swear I could close my eyes and tell you if a woman was coming near me within 50 feet, because the smell was so unique.
Field. You get that in the field. You're out in the field for, say, 30, 40 days on a cax out in stumps. And it's like, man, all you smelling is a bunch of stinky Marines. And then you come back in and you take a shower and you're like, oh yeah, it feels good. And then you're like, wait, where's the WM? I smelled perfume, and you're like, wow. So
wow.
It's amazing some of the skills you pick up. That's cool, like ingrained into you.
Yes.
Here's a question from Sean. I don't want to cut you off. I just want to get one of the audience questions in here. It says, Harold, who would you like to be interviewed by?
Whiskey Charlie.
That's right. That was
mission accomplished.
We've already checked that box, right? So we got Dan, Mo, and Nate. No, it's a great question. One that I'd have to think about a little bit if I can cop out. This American Life. Who's the dude that does This American Life? It's one of the podcasts I love the most. But the principal that does that for that Chicago PBS station, somebody will think of it here, I'm sure.
Or Google it. That's what I want to do.
He's good, and he's just a really bright guy, and it's thoughtful and interesting.
Ira Jeffrey Glass.
Is it Ira Glass?
Ira Glass. Yep.
Yeah.
Ira Jeffrey Glass. What it says here.
So I don't. He would never touch us because of our hobby, and it has the word war in it, which I'm sure he thinks is terrible, but. So his politics wouldn't necessarily match with what we do, but I think that would be interesting. But it's Nate. It's interesting to hear you and Mo talk about and thank both of you for your service. And it really it makes me feel silly a little bit, right? When we talk about war in such a flippant attitude in the games, so I appreciate you guys who have actually been through the horror of this thing. That you participate in this and add some legitimacy that, unfortunately guys like Dan and I don't bring, because, I almost feel like we don't belong here.
Yeah, I understand.
We're kind of flipping about it when we're over there. You'd be amazed with the mindset, because you can't think about
humor.
what you're doing. You have to think of everything in a humorous mindset, because otherwise it'll kind of get to you.
Yeah.
Like, when I was wounded, right, got hit by the mine, blown up, knocked unconscious. And the first thing I did when I came to and I realized what happened, I reached down, I grabbed it, and I'm like, okay, still there. I'm good. I'm like, no problem. I can deal with anything else. I'm like, they got fake legs, they got fake other stuff. As long as he's there,
The
I'm
first
happy.
question.
Good.
It's the first question. Twig and berries?
I'm
Yeah,
like,
like you're good. I'm good.
yeah, I guess, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Priorities, man.
You have a mindset. It's really hard to describe unless you've been through it. But you take everything in a humorous gesture, or a lot of people do, just because otherwise it would kind of just wear you down. You know?
Gimpy, that's funny, but it ain't funny. You know what I'm saying? That
Well,
ain't funny, man.
it was funny at the moment. I can laugh about it now, but let's just say I was very much concerned because of the location of the explosion and where I was on how everything survived. And I gotta say, I think God was looking out for us, because we had 4 Humvees we could run that mission with that were out, and we were in the only newer A3 version, the up armored version, where the cab was surrounded in composite steel, and it was like 4 inches of composite steel. The rest were just up armored, where we had like welded or bolted on armor, but it wasn't on the bottom. So if we had been in one of those Humvees, like, it would just been blown apart. It would have just killed everyone. But as it was, the cab absorbed most of the impact. So we took a lot of shrapnel and, concussive blast, but the cab was pretty well intact. It just blew off everything else. We were in the only Humvee in our lot that we could actually get hit and survive in. So
that's the thing people don't think about, is the concussive part of the blast, how it does damage. They even remodeled the Kevlar, because the Kevlar was too big, and it was actually, it turned out that they realized that guys over there was, when something would go off, it would catch under the wider Kevlar and it would pull their heads, and it would cause neck injuries and head injuries, things like that, and even fatalities. So they kind of made that smaller helmet now, so it's a little tighter to head, so it would not have that same area for the concussive blast to go through. But interesting. And
you got to think of the strength of it. I mean, the doors on our Humvee were over 300 pounds of just steel, like armored steel, and this blast just warped them. I mean, bent them.
Hell, man.
So, I mean, the blast was hard. I mean, my ears bled for days.
Yeah, but you know what? The rock head that you got wasn't going to get dinged at all. So.
It dinged. It hurt like hell, dude.
And wasn't it just recently your Alive Day, brother?
No, that's
or it's coming up
in July.
Okay. Yeah,
July 12th.
Yeah.
Gimpy, you're saying the doors on the Humvee are 300 pounds?
On the one we were in. Yeah. Like they're heavy. The armored Humvees, the doors are very, very heavy. The windows are designed in such a way that they're bulletproof. They're only about yay big to go through. And it's certain types of Humvees. They don't use this stuff anymore. They moved on to much better equipment since then. But those were, real heavy. Designed to latch and not be able to be opened by the enemy or to be shot through. It's bulletproof. It's not lightweight. Think about a car. Any car that they up armor, it's going to be heavy as hell. That's
but it can be operated by Marines. But it could easily be operated by Marines. You know why?
Because we destroyed them.
Always a pack of Crayolas inside. So ain't going to stop Marines from getting inside that. Snacks.
I felt bad. I burned down 2 Humvees in my time in the military. Like, just burned them to the ground. But one wasn't my fault. The mechanics forgot to put oil back in it.
Don't ever donate a Humvee to Nate. It won't last long.
Or buy one that he owns.
Yeah, exactly.
Both of them caught fire. And everybody's like getting mad at me. I'm like, I didn't.
I want the Carfax. I want the Carmax on your car. What is it? The Carfax or whatever the heck it is. I want to see the details on that Humvee. But Nick brings up a good question here. He says, "How about a virtual con?" I think this year will be a really good opportunity because we were talking earlier about all the issues that conventions will have. Kind of coming up with a way to have a virtual convention online, utilizing the technology to do that.
How are we going to do that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's a good question. How, could that be done? How? Let's all put our heads together here and just throw out some ideas.
That's a Harold question.
Yeah.
Well, starting with Harold, of course.
I think it's a great idea. So So, in my mind, there are a handful of ways. Dan, if you start me giggling,
Stop it. Stop it.
Make him stop. Dan, you're going to have to leave if you keep this up.
Stop it. Just go on.
Hey, we threw Volko out of the last one. If we throw Volko out, we'll certainly throw you out. So I'm going to be serious here for a minute. I think that we could run little tournaments, right? Or even not even a tournament, just round robin playing opportunities, right? Where people can match and play on Vassal, or if you'll let me call Twilight Struggle a war game, we could play that on iOS or Steam. I mean, now with Labyrinth, I mean, there's a bunch of games, right, that I would call war games that are now on Steam or iOS. Mm-hmm. It's going to take it would take a lot of people, right? So we would have to have somebody run each little event and organize and administer and make rulings. It wouldn't have to all happen in one day or even a weekend, right? It could happen over the course of a couple. I'm sure we could get prize support from the game companies, which are also generous for that kind of thing. Actually maybe we do it and we charge a little bit and we give the money to a charity, right? Mm-hmm. A wounded warrior or something that fits the heart of the two guys on this podcast or on this video that have actually paid a price. I think then there's the other thing we could do is we could do some Zoom seminars, right? Imagine a seminar where you've got Uwe Eichert for a half hour or 45 minutes and people can ask him questions. And then you've got, Gene Billingsley and Doc Cummins after that, and Volko and Mark Herman and John Butterfield and Dan Pancaldi, right? All those people that would, so, we could have a 12-hour, I would sit and watch 12 hours of Zoom meetings of all those people except for Dan.
We should do it.
I think that there are a lot of different angles that you could take to it. I fear I'm an organizer by nature, but I always get into stuff that I shouldn't, and then end up spending my entire life organizing it. But I think if we had a group of people that were interested, I think we could probably figure out a way to break it up into pieces and make something happen, and maybe even make some money for charity too.
I think the convention, the Zoom meeting type of thing would be really interesting, having seminars. And I think just doing stuff like this, having people doing shows and doing live plays in groups like this would be fun too. And, just bring people in, if we can have like a bigger show where it's like, okay, not 4 or 6, maybe we have a spot for 20, and then we can have a bunch of people hang out and just kind of talk or have fun and just relax and kind of adjust to our new normal a little bit and still continue on with gaming the way we've done for years.
A little virtual roundtable.
Sure.
Like we did previously, that could work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the great thing about, there are going to be really good things that come out of this pandemic. These pandemics through history have changed things dramatically, many for the worst, but advanced the way we do stuff. And I think we're all, this show, I think, is a testament to that, right? That we're using technologies now that we wouldn't have messed with too much 6 months ago or a year ago. And so I'm excited about the potential for more video and live. And I love what you guys do. I watch them and I cuss at you. I don't type anything, but I usually cuss at somebody during the podcast or during the show.
What was it that Kev was doing with his sniper game?
Oh yeah, that's we were talking about that a little bit the other night. He was running a live game. He was basically, the old sniper game. He had that down on the table, cameras on it, and he's like, "Okay, here are the pieces, and all right, give me an order to do with this guy here. What do you want to do, guys?" And he just had people do it, and that's when I said, what we should do is do that, but assign a counter for each person that's in the chat. If we have, anybody that wants to participate ahead of time, you say, okay, you're going to have this counter, you're going to have this counter. So when you make that decision that is your virtual counterpart, that's your avatar in the game. So when you make that decision, if you die, you're out, so it kind of puts you, gives you a little skin in the game. So you're kind of playing it a little bit. You're thinking through it a little bit more. Obviously, it's not going to be like a 2-hour game. It'll be like an hour game or something. But I think it'd be kind of fun, and it'll be an interactive way of having people play from all around the world pretty easy.
Yeah.
The thing is, I think we could do it. Like, we've got the technology, we've got, all that stuff, the ability to pull it off. It's the person who's heading it up has to be big enough and coordinated enough to actually get all the associated parties involved and willing to participate in whatever's cooked up. So it would have to be the right person, I think, would make or break it.
I'm out.
Yeah. Dan,
I think it's a group of people. I would obviously take a group of people. It couldn't be just all on one person, because if you're going to talk technology, that's different than talking getting a hotel, and getting a ballroom. That's not that it's easy, but it's easier for one or two people to coordinate that than it is to actually try to coordinate multiple technologies. That would take a group of people.
Yeah, you're right that it would be multiple people involved in it, but no matter how high you go up, eventually you find one person.
Sure.
It would have to be like the head, the face of it. And whoever that person is would have to be like Johnny on the spot to really pull off something good and tremendous like we're talking about. I'd help out though. So
Harold, you seem to be nodding in agreement. Are you volunteering for something like this?
Dan, I haven't volunteered for anything.
He gets voluntold.
I think it's a great idea, and I think it could be fun, and I think we could put some parameters around it that would make it fun. I mean, I just have a million ideas now that you guys are mentioning it. The key is to get a team of people that are willing to do all the hard work, right? That's necessary for each of the components.
Yeah.
To have some sort of theme. To rally the support of the game companies, which are all going to be would be willing to do something. Especially, we have a unique opportunity to make it a charity oriented event.
Which would be fantastic.
Which would be fun, right? I mean, it would be really cool. So I'd be up for talking about participating in some fashion. Yeah. I
mean, I'd love to play Tank Duel with like 16 people type thing, man.
That would be, I think, a little harder than 4 to 8. 8 would be tough, but it would be fun. I think it would be awesome. I think it would be a hell of fun.
To see Dan play all 16 roles. He would just run around the table. And
I like that.
I'm firing myself over here.
Harold, I have ADD, not multiple personalities. I can't do it.
We'll give you a box and a lid if you pull it off.
Well, I'm going to bring up some big controversy here. I know Harold doesn't like controversy, but we said we're going to not get serious, but I'm going to get serious here for a minute. So now let's ask the hive mind here: is Twilight Struggle a war game? Harold's like, oh my god, I thought he was really going to do something stupid. No,
he was braced for it.
No, my answer to that, because it's like the ongoing silly argument. My answer to that is Twilight Struggle is a conflict simulation, not a war game. But conflict simulation is another term for war game. So yes, it's a war game.
I agree with you.
It's modeling a conflict, and it's not kinetic, but it's political, and it's influence, it's area control, it's combat.
Very good. Oh, I agree.
It's very abstracted.
Sure.
But so many war games are. I
mean, every war game is abstracted. Yeah. Even like OCS, which everyone's like, oh, this is like super, and it is. It's super detailed. It's still not as detailed as actually running, a true operational situation in the real world, because one person couldn't do all that. That's why you have staffs, so.
Do you really have people arguing against Twilight?
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it really isn't that hard of a concept.
Crusty grog.
And Nate, I think you're on the right issue, right? I mean, and the reason Mo brings it up is because I talk about this whole debate about what's a war game and what's not. And my experience is that we just waste too much time fighting over, drawing these hard lines, because who really cares about whether it's a war game or not, right? I mean, the taxonomy of what's in that category versus another, if it really matters to somebody, that's great, right? Let them figure out what's in this box and that, but I don't care what the boxes are. I love Twilight Struggle. I love Combat Commander and Advanced Squad Leader too, right? And so, which I think are war games, clearly, or I get less debate about it.
It's also set in a Cold War. So yeah, it's a war game.
Well, look, my silly answer, Mo, is that it has 2 tank counters on it, right? So I mean, if it has
DEF CON,
counters, you can't call it not a war game. I think that that we spend a ton of time on that question, and to me, it doesn't matter. And it hurts my heart when we see somebody like David Thompson, right, who makes these incredible games. I mean, the dude is innovative, over the top.
Baby Herman.
And I'm so excited about the way he thinks about stuff and what he presents. And Dan, what are you giggling about, Dan?
Baby Herman. He called him Baby Herman.
He's like a baby Mark Herman. I really think that's
yeah. So you think about how bright he is, and there are a group of people that say your games aren't war games. And they're not saying it because they're giving him a gift of love, right? They're saying it because they say, look, what you do isn't good enough for me and what I like. And frankly, I'm okay with them not liking his game or not liking my game. Plenty of people don't like Liberty or Death, right? Go to BGG. They're very vocal about it. And that's cool. I don't mind it. But why should you attack David Thompson, who's brilliant, and say your games aren't war games? I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a family show. I can't tell you why they're attacking David Thompson, but I can after the show's over.
They're jackasses.
I don't get it. I mean, especially one of his most recent ones, By Stealth and Sea, is the epitome of a war game.
Well, no kidding.
Yeah. Well, and that one they may not argue about, but Undaunted Normandy.
Undaunted. Yeah.
There's an incredible thread of hundreds of posts on BGG about whether Undaunted Normandy's I'm amazed that anybody's willing to spend that energy on that debate.
War game.
Yeah.
There are multiple levels of war game. You have something like that, which is, fairly easy to understand, which is great because it's easy to understand. It's easy to get on the table. It's easy to teach another person. It's easy to get that other person into our hobby. So it's a great thing.
If you have 4 teenagers and you have 1 bathroom, it's a war game.
Look, every war game doesn't have to be a World at War or Absolute Victory or Case Blue.
That's right.
It doesn't have to be the huge one with thousands upon thousands of counters with hexes as far as the eye can see in a 7-foot map. It doesn't have to be that way to count as a war game. This Undaunted Normandy, I actually covered that one recently, and I thank David for it because I couldn't buy a copy. They were sold out everywhere.
Right.
But it's a great entry-level war game. It's a great beer and pretzels war game because you don't always want to, crunch your brain to try to get your head into a game. Sometimes you just want to sit back and chuck some dice and drink a beer.
Yeah.
That one's perfect for it. And it's got a cute little tractor on it, which my wife loved. She still loves a little tractor on it. But she did a little video on that thing. But I think it's great, and it gets other people into the hobby who might not want that huge experience at first. They don't know what war games are really all about, but they like this little game, so they're willing to try something a little bit deeper. And
if you notice, there's I know Harold and I have talked about it. There is a growing interest in it, and this is something we would like to tap into. Is there's a growing interest, a curiosity from the Euro side of things. Hey, what's a war game? And you're starting to see a lot more Euro gamers that are saying, yeah, that's kind of cool. They're talking war games. They're looking at them. They're observing them. They're curious. And then, Coin is a great example of it. They play a coin game and they're like, oh, I played a war game. And Coin is essentially a Euro with a war theme and a what's the word I'm looking for?
It's a card driven Euro war game.
Yeah, it's got Euro mechanics, but it's also got what I say is it's a Euro game with war game sensibilities, and the two, it's a hybridized thing together where it gives you the best of both worlds, and it makes both sides happy. Unless you are the crusty old grog that says it's not a war game, it does no hexes and counters. Right. It's like, just go with it, have fun.
I think that if people can call it and classify these things however they want, but it'd be great if we could find something a little bit broader that just reduced the stress, right?
Sure.
And it's not stress on me. I just see people arguing that, and it's exclusionary and it's just kind of rude, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because every time I see that argument, it's somebody trying to say, look, this doesn't count. I don't play that stuff. That's not in my universe.
Well, good
So
for you.
Volko suggested. Sorry, Nate. Volko suggested historical simulation, right? Which I think fits a lot of stuff. I like conflict simulation, and those two things have different kind of, you know, they're, if a Venn diagram, they would have different overlaps. But you know, I don't know. And the term Euro game, I don't even know what the hell that means, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what does it mean? It doesn't have a hex. It's got blocks. I don't think that defines a type of
in Europe.
Yeah.
But there's so many games that are classified as Euros that they don't really have their own category. There's Euros, which is just everything that's not Ameritrash or a war game.
Right.
Is pretty much what it is. So you can't really classify them as anything.
No.
Although Ameritrash.
Number one thing is, did you have fun?
Yeah.
That's all that matters.
Can we find other people to play it with? That's part of the challenge. Now, the other thing I talk about that's controversial, that pisses people off, and I kind of like it because it pisses people off.
And that's why we brought you on the show, to piss everyone off.
There you go. Well, it's this the term war game, right? And the term war game is hundreds of years old. It's been around forever. But I don't think it sheds a very positive light on what we do. I think talking about war and game in the same sentence, Jim Dunnigan said, right? This is not the way to talk about this stuff. It's not a very appealing way, right? Because war is a serious, terrible subject, right? I mean, atrocities for as long as mankind has been mankind. Yeah. So, you know, I don't like, personally, I don't like to use the term war game. I use it sometimes because it's easy, because we all kind of understand what that means. But for that reason, I'd also like to find a different term.
What would the term be, Harold?
What's that, Dan? Say it again.
What would that be? Like, what have you come up with?
Conflict simulation is what I like. Volko says historic simulation.
It just sounds so scientific. You know what I mean? Like, it's got to be something more fun, like war game.
Come at me, bro.
Let's play a
come at me, bro game tonight.
I mean, you know, part of the problem is we're a bunch of old white guys, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think part of it is we just don't see how weird it sounds when we talk about playing games of war.
I guess I don't see it. I don't see it.
I agreed, and that's my point, right? That sometimes because you're an old white guy, you don't have the perspective of somebody that looks in from the outside with a different background.
Well, the other thing too is war game itself and wargaming. The terms are actually used, in the business world. Have you war gamed it out? You know, it's a term that's thrown around. You know, did we war game this? Did we war game that? You know,
but you know, I would say, in my experience, simulated and modeled.
Yeah.
Much more than war game. Nate, you're boiling. I want to hear it.
No, it's nothing like that. A couple of things.
Steam's rising.
One, I actually, to something you said earlier, I had a college professor that I dinged off that very thing that you were mentioning, because we were talking about a war. I think it was Revolutionary War, but the guy was almost giddy in the way that he was talking about, the professor. And he was talking about, well, the soldiers are thinking this and the soldiers are thinking that. And they were, thinking about the bigger picture and the morality and this. I'm like, no, they weren't. I talked to the professor and I was like, look, I served overseas. I guarantee you, they were not thinking about that. They were thinking about their moms, their wives, their buddy next to them in the hole, and the fact that they were cold and hungry and would go the hell home. They did not think about the grander meaning of what they were doing in that damn hole. And he kind of got distracted, and I got to be in the course. So
I think that's a victory, Nate.
Yes. The fact that I didn't fail, I called it even. To what you're talking about war gamers being kind of like a niche thing, it's really not. The biggest miniatures game on the planet right now is X-Wing, which I play, and that's very easily called a war game, and many tens of thousands of people play that game. You've got 40K, which is still huge. Yeah. So there's a huge complement of war gamers.
Dungeons.
What are you saying, Dan? Those are not war gamers.
Dungeons and Dragons?
No.
You're fighting a dragon.
Yeah, but it depends on what you're playing. Like, if you play D&D, and, of course, now the RPG players can correct me on this one, but you play D&D, you're playing more for the story and the role playing. Now, yes. Pathfinder, when I play Pathfinder, that tends to be more tactical. because you're, when you're playing like I forget what they call it now, Pathfinder Society. When you're playing in those one shots that you play, you're going in there to play for 3 or 4 hours, and it's like, you know what, we have a start and an end. We've got a scenario, we've got a situation, and you're basically trying to find who the bad guy is or where the bad guy is, and then get into a tactical fight. Okay. And that's a little different.
That's what I meant. I meant Pathfinder, because I didn't think you guys knew Pathfinder. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I think that's the differentiation between the two, or those two major RPG systems, but there's a ton of RPGs out there.
Right. But they're all conflictual, man. It's always a fight with something, man.
No, if you're playing true RPG, you're role playing out your role. So if you're the wizard, you're going to do what a wizard does. If you're the bard, you're going to, well, don't be a bard, Dan, because you'll sing. But but you play through your role, and if you have a good GM, they encourage you to play your role out and not necessarily doesn't have to end in conflict or be a conflict. It could be, just more negotiating through a problem or something like that, which is pretty fun.
Still not a war game. Sorry, I could resist.
So, okay. Now, John says here, football involves a ball, but not a foot. Should we call it arm ball?
Yeah, you should call it arm ball, because football is you play with your foot, and
it's foosball.
They kick the ball. There's punting.
They kick squat, man. Go see this. I hate to call it soccer, but go see soccer. They kick the ball, Nate.
No, soccer. That's not a sport. That's just.
Oh, that's not a sport, Nate.
They just kind of.
Let one of those guys kick you in the ass.
We can all agree it's not a war game.
It's not a war game.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, they've got the miniatures games that are based on sports. Yeah, was it the Blood Bowl? Yeah, I've got that one. That's a war game.
No, Nate.
What?
Nothing.
I love you, Dan.
Yeah.
I will tell you this, though. If you ever do play Harold in Twilight Struggle, he goes for the jugular right away. I'll tell you that. He's very good at that game. And unfortunately, he and I had played several times. And then the last time he sent me an invitation, I was like, oh, I'll get back to it. And I was just tied up at work, and I never got back to it. Then the invite expired or whatever. And I was like, I've just been too busy. But if you want to get roundly kicked, play Harold. He's good. That's for sure.
You're very kind, Mo. I play a bunch of people that just thrash me consistently.
They're sharks.
And notably, Bruce Garrick thrashed me for a couple of years, and then I started beating him, and he stopped playing me. He stopped. Can you believe that?
Well, you don't get better if you play people that are worse than you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
You've
and that's my favorite game. War game or not, that's my favorite game. I just love everything about it, and I really, because I played it so much, I just respect the elegance, the work that Ananda and Jason did is phenomenal. It's
like all time favorite.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good choice.
They caught lightning in a bottle, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, it's a part of it is the selection of the theme, right? The time period. It's very romantic to old white guys like us. Hey, there's my main man, Patrick Garrett. Patrick Garrett serving in Japan right now in the diplomatic corps.
Is that
nice?
Is that Pat Garrett, the guy who trying to get?
Pat, I hope I'm allowed to say that.
Is he the T-shirt winner?
Yes, I think so.
Oh, we still trying to track down T-shirt winners?
Well, I mean, Harold got him. I couldn't get him.
So we did the presentation. Dan picked out 2 people at random. 30 days later, I'm still saying, Dan, can you get me these addresses? And he said, I can't. There's one of them I can't find. So I said, just send me the name. And 5 minutes later, I had Patrick's address.
It's true.
It is. It is, Dan.
It's true. 5 minutes.
Hang with me. I'll teach you how to do it.
It's an American thing.
That's right. It's the United States, man. We don't give up.
I don't accept that.
Dan, we have all sorts of cool things here in America, like running water and heating. We have actual floors instead of dirt.
Jesus, Mo. I mean, whatever your name is.
Mo or whatever your name is. I'm Mo.
I'm not talking to you, Mo. I'm talking to Nate.
Well, you
See,
called my name.
It's 4 letters.
Call me 3 times fast, and I will just appear.
My man Sham was asking about Imperial Struggle. I too am excited about Imperial Struggle from that tandem of Nanda Gupta and Jason Matthews. Both those guys are just so smart and so good. I play tested an early version of that. We went through it here in San Diego a good number of times, and it's really really interesting, but so very different from Twilight Struggle. And I think so many people were expecting Twilight Struggle, right? So so that's going to be
it's going to be a shock for some people, I think.
Yeah, it'll be a shock for some people, but that's okay. I think the direction they went is appropriate for the conflict. And that's what I love about those guys, right? I mean, they don't make a game because they have a mechanic. They make a game because they like a theme, and then they take that theme, right, the long conflict between the British and the French, and then created mechanics that were justified by that war or by the series of wars, right? Hard and
similar. Is it similar, or is it completely overhaul, completely
well,
different?
it's a bunch of interrelated spaces, right? That you can influence across the map. So it's related in that way, but it's very different. The cards in Twilight Struggle are the game, right? That's what drives the game. In this, the cards are not the game. The cards are a slight enhancement. They give you a slight capability because they represent ministers in the country and different things they can do. So the cards play a much lighter role. And then you just have a large menu of things you can do, which drive a lot of choices.
So it's more like the actions, like the list of different actions that you can take on your turn.
It's almost like learning a tech tree. It's almost like learning a tech tree in a civilization game for an easy way to try to relate it. Now, I don't know how it's changed. I know it has, but I played it at YourCon a few years ago, Harold, when it was just with Ananda, when it was just basically charts, kind of like interconnected charts, and the little I forget what it was like I can't think of the term I'm looking for here, but just symbols together with lines, and it was interesting, and I was like, wow, this is definitely not Twilight Struggle. And he goes, well, I'm glad to hear that, thank you, because he did not want to have a repeat of that. He knew that everybody was expecting that, and it's a big departure, but it's similar feel, but definitely a different game.
Yeah.
So you're still trying to control certain areas of the map, though.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got Europe, you've got I don't know, West Indies, for lack of a better term. You've got the Americas, so you've got these macro regions. And then you're trying to exert influence, political, military. Each game plays out. So there are some time periods where you don't have war, right? Where it's just a soft conflict. And then you'll go into another time period where war is imminent. So you're always positioning for where you want to be during the next hard or soft conflict.
Oh, that sounds really good.
It's awesome, man. And these guys, they're the best, right? I mean, I love Volko and Mark Herman and all these. I mean, there's so many people that I think are great, but these two guys together are just phenomenal. So I highly recommend it. And it's supposed to be close, right?
Yeah, no, it is. It's very close, and I think given the track record, it'll do well. It'll probably do really well, and then we can see the third game from those two guys in 2034. Am I right?
Yes.
There's no need to know Twilight Struggle to play this new game?
No.
It won't help you at all, Dan.
And Holden's asking.
I'm going to use the medium that we've got here, and I'm going to put a link to it link to the GMT page. And there's all kinds of cool stuff there. There's a map as well. But I'm going to put that in the chat for Facebook or YouTube, right? We're in YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube. Yeah. And Holden was asking, any thoughts on 4X games like Space Empires?
I love Space Empires.
I do too. I do too. There's a mechanical thing about Space Empires that bothers me a little bit as it relates to kind of ease of play, and that is that you know how it is, right? The game's long, and you're kind of playing your own little game until you bump into each other. Mm-hmm. And while you do that, if you make a mistake, it's right. It's to how you execute. It just cascades and grows exponentially. and there's no mechanism to check that, right? I mean, it's just because we're doing it ourselves, can't check that until we hit each other.
Mhm.
And then you can find out, oh, wow, my carrier cost, I didn't pay enough for my aircraft carrier or my carrier or whatever it is, or battle cruiser or whatever it is. So, so that, that bothers me, because I can tell you that I've gotten to a lot of games, and it's usually me that screws it up. And I get, 15, 20 cycles in, and then I end up having completely screwed the pooch.
Have you tried the replicators?
That issue aside, I love that kind of game.
Have you tried the replicators expansion for it?
I have not. But I have played. There's a solo spreadsheet. Have you ever played that? So Mike Berticelli somehow, and he's great about this. He dug up a solo alien. And so he and I and Jordan Kerr played 3 different civilizations that were up against the aliens. And so each of you work cooperatively and then go after this alien that's run by a spreadsheet. And it's really a cool. Did you enjoy the replicators? Or
I actually thought they did well with the replicators. I think that because it's hard to AI the players in Space Empires, and I think that does a good job of streamlining, because that's always what you want to see in a solitaire component, is streamlining the rules, streamlining the play, so the least amount of decisions need to be made. And they almost play like a wave, that they're just conquering everything as they just go across. So your goal is to just stop this, and I think that's the premise behind them, some robotic AI army that just takes over everything. Right. Something I've always wanted to try that I've just not had the time to, because I know it would be a time sink, would be to combine the Space Empires and Talon game. And that when the forces meet, actually pull it to the side and play out a game of Talon and then go back. But I mean, you can only imagine how much that would expand. Yeah. That would be a months long experience, but it would be awesome.
It would be an awesome experience. Yeah.
That's a Callendale thing, I think.
There you go. And he'd have like a 74 episode run on it,
Oh man, and the rant at the end of that, the review, that would be like years.
Yeah, no, it would be fun though. It would be Callendale.
Yeah.
Now,
that dude, he sometimes I get sad watching him. I feel bad. But have you seen him recently?
No.
I turned it on. He thinks he's got the virus.
Oh, does he?
He's contemplating his life, and it's just a very. He's an interesting guy, but sometimes he kind of makes me sad.
Yeah.
He was like that. What was it, a year or 2 ago? I think. Yeah, he was kind of in a bad place, and then he kind of pulled himself out of it, and now it sounds like he's kind of back in that again. So
it's tough, and if I'm in a bad place, the last place I want to be is in public, right?
Yeah, online.
Yeah. Having Dan giggle about my
no, for God's sake. And
I know you wouldn't, Dan. I love you. I'm just kidding.
The thing is that Callendale, Enrico, I'm sure he's not very social outside of the internet, type thing. So the internet is, I guess, his social outlet, man.
So maybe it's a gift. Yeah.
It works for him. Although I can't be the only person who's fallen asleep watching one of his shows. And I'm not insulting the guy. Like I'll go outside and I'm smoking before I go to bed, right? And it's 1, 2 in the morning, and I'm like, oh, this looks like an interesting game. I'll watch this, and then an hour later, I'm like, oh wait, I gotta go to bed. Okay.
Oops.
Well, speaking of solo games, is there any plans on revamping the solo play for Liberty or Death using the new Arjuna bot that was created for Gandhi?
Yeah, I think we're going to do it. Bruce is a big fan of Liberty or Death. I'm a big fan of his work and Gandhi, and of course the bots. And so I think he and Jason are going to work on it at some point. I don't know when. And we haven't really put that on the website because I want to make sure that we can do it timing wise.
Sure.
But I think we'll do that, and I think we'll see some, refinement on some counters or cards. For example, I'm a little bit pissed that the Declaration of Independence doesn't have a bigger impact in the game. So I'm going to crank that thing up, put that on steroids. And if reason other than to just piss off my Canadian friends like Dan. Declaration of Independence, baby.
Would that be like a new edition or maybe an upgrade kit? Would you guys be able to do an upgrade kit for that?
GMT's pretty good about providing an upgrade kit. So you could upgrade for the card upgrades and the bot if you wanted to. But you could also continue to play the game as it stands because everything works. It's great. Right? You don't have to. It's not. And frankly, I'm not really enhancing play. I'm just changing it a little bit.
Oh, like I said, Liberty was the first coin game that I ever gave a shot to, and I didn't have a strong opinion before I played it. And I remember I made a Facebook post after I played it the first time. I was like, why didn't someone hit me and tell me how good coin games are? Like, what the hell was I thinking? Because it didn't appeal to me until I sat down and actually was going over it. And my wife just loved it because there was a bunch of little wooden pieces with little colors all over. She's like, oh, this just looks adorable. But there's a real deep experience in there. I just had never given it a chance until I actually sat down with Liberty, and now I've got a collection of coin games.
I'm waiting for that revelation, man. That baseball bat in the head. I'm waiting for it.
I think you may have already received the baseball bat in the head, Dan. Nate, I had a similar experience to yours. I stopped gaming for a long time when I went to college, and then after my kids started moving out, then I started back. Because just looking for something to do in my free time, and so I played. One of the first games I played was this new Andean Abyss. So think about it, right? My life was all Avalon Hill and SPI hex and counter games, and then I hear about this Andean Abyss, and I played. It just blew my mind. I couldn't believe that there was something so innovative and interesting, and 4 players and asymmetric. And the system, one of the beauty of Volko's system is that it's all transparent. All the information is available to every player.
Yeah.
Which we don't talk about enough, right? I mean, that's really amazing. It's easier to make a tough game where I have my cards and you don't know what they are, right? Mm-hmm. But lay out everything and then make a game. He's a big brain.
And it's constantly, you're constantly trying to fight that decision or wrestle with the decision of, I'm eligible now, but if I pass, the next card is going to be better. And then the guys behind you are like, don't pass, don't pass, don't pass. Oh, son of a, you passed, damn it.
Can I pay you resources not to pass?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, you're right. The asymmetric aspect of the gameplay, choosing like when is the strong moment for you to go, that's the real key component I just loved about coin games.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the beauty of what he did wasn't the counterinsurgency thing. It's just the fact that it's a really cool system where all the information's transparent and it's asymmetric, and people are applying it to all sorts of stuff, right? He's got his own little minions that are working on little games all around because his system's great and it has nothing to do with insurgencies. I want to answer a question. My main man, Sean, asked a question. Here's another one from him, but about the war in the South. So for Liberty or Death, I did a 2-player variant that was the War in the South, and it was in C3I magazine. And that was very popular. Roger McGowan said, as long as I give him attribution, I can put that in. And so I want to do that, Sean. I'm not sure that'll happen, but I want to do that. And I think Roger's okay with it. And I also have another scenario in my head that's the beginning of the war, 2-player. So Patriots and the British face off at the very beginning of the war, and that'll be another fast play 2-player scenario. That war in the South, it turned out to be a lot of fun. And then Sean, amount of money he's invested. I thought he said wasted, but he said invested in a coin. Playing one properly is silly. It was great to see him. Well, thank you, Sean, for the kind words. It's and then if you're a completionist like me, where you feel like you should own every game in a series, I don't know why I think that. That's the stupidest thing, but I do it all the time. And then I end up with a whole shelf of coin games.
Oh yeah, I know.
Well, that shelf up there is full, and it's covered right now, but it goes all the way to Gandhi, all 9. So.
Oh man,
so you got some catching up to do.
But
none of you guys have young kids. You can tell none of you guys have young kids.
But the funny thing is, though, I've never played with any of the bots.
Really?
I've sat down to look at them, and I've kind of poked around on them. I'm like, nah, I'm just going to play all 4 sides. Because to me, playing the 4 sides is, number one, it teaches you how to think from each of the different, factions in the game. And if you approach it in the right mindset, like any solitaire war game, you just go, I'm playing to the best of my ability. And if you really run into a tough thing, I don't know what to do, but then, roll a dice or something like that, make a decision, or, instead of flipping a coin or something. But pun intended.
Flipping a coin.
Yeah, flipping a coin, flip the table, But I think it's I think it's a great system that you can play, all four sides at once. Now, some people, it's too much.
All the information is available, right?
Yeah, all the information is available, so you can play it and you can learn it. Now, granted, the bots are there for a reason, and they're great bots for the people who want to do that. But now with the Arjuna bot being it looks a lot easier, actually, more compact. I think I'm going to explore that and see, is this better than the standard fold out flowchart bot that's been in use before.
No, I haven't tried that one. I haven't tried that bot, the newest bot. Is there a big difference? Is it really that much of a step up over these previous bots? Like, is it worth getting? It's a step up
in the ease of use.
So, what's the difference? Because I know, like, the flow chart from the previous bots. How does this bot operate that's different from that?
Cards.
Well, the flow chart is necessary when the instructions are so complex you can't include them on the cards. And so what Bruce did was he designed a system that incorporated aspects of the solo player. And he went through a number of times and would simplify the cards and restate them so you didn't need a separate chart that told you what to do on each card, right? So
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, it's the way to do it, right? It's the thoughtful way. In the end, we have there's a bit of a groupthink problem going on where we think that a bot needs to evaluate the entire map situation, gather that data, make choices, and then act like they're a player when they execute it, right? And that's what coin bots have historically done. Mm-hmm. The direction now, I think, is starting to move over to, do we have to be that obsessive, right? I mean, do we have to act like they're players? Because bots in coin games cheat in a big way. There are two massive cheats. One of them is if there's a limited command or a limited op for a bot, then they get a command and an op and a command, right? No, sorry, an op and a special activity, right? So they cheat in that regard. The other way they cheat is that you can't win as the individual until the end of the game, but the bots can win during the winter quarters phase in the middle. And that's a huge cheat. So let's face the fact that the bots cheat and not try to make them like humans, right? And I think that we're starting to see some of that. We're starting to see that simplification. But, to Mo's point, there are players that play those games because those bots have that level of complexity and input and output complexity. And I think that's okay, right? I mean, I think there's a group there. But I will tell you, on most games, and Bruce Mansfield says this isn't true for Gandhi, and I love Bruce and I trust him in everything, but I don't believe him. But in all the other games, 85% of the questions we get on BGG, for example, are about the bots. They're not about gameplay, multiplayer gameplay. That all works. They're about the bots. So that tells you inherently, if people can't understand the bots as they're written and are challenged, we need to find a simpler way to do it.
I understand that. I've been challenged by the bots before, going, is this? I don't know. This is what they mean, and I'll end up making a judgment call.
Yeah.
It's
Meanwhile, I'm halfway done with my game, and you're still on like the second turn because you're fighting with those bots.
The thing
and I don't say it in a facetious way. I mean, it came out that way. That's why I don't mess with the bots. I'm like, I'd rather just play the game, and I play all four sides.
Yeah. Some of the best solitaire experience I've had have been with, for example, like Uve's solitaire bot for Conflict of Heroes. Which is the way those cards work. Walk it down the list, do the first one that applies, and I always thought that plays very well. Not too often do I have to make a judgment call. So it sounds like the coin games are going in that direction, which is up my alley.
They're starting to, Nate. So we're moving a little bit in that direction, and The good news is we're getting more and more new designers, more young people. I'm like Mo. I like to play kind of God mode, and I don't enjoy the bots, but I know that there are people that do. My hypothesis is that if we can find a way to simplify it and make it easier to play, we're going to see a lot more people use those card-based bots than ever used the flowcharts. But there'll be a group of people that are really disappointed because they love the flowcharts and they love the input complexity and the output complexity that bugs me is what they love about it. Yeah. And like I said, that's why we get the questions. Because they love the games, and when that bot gets them to a place where they can't advance. I have a good friend here in town that I love playing with him, and he's a great gamer. But if he gets to a point where a bot is not clear, he gets frustrated and he doesn't ever want to play the game again. And you said, Nate, I apply judgment and I do whatever, right? I'm cool with that too. But a lot of these bot players are not.
Yeah, they want.
I'm very ad hoc about it. I'll just, what is the best decision at the moment? Because more often than not, I'm filming, at that moment. And I want the bots there. I want them to exist because I want to be able to show that aspect of the game off. And I'm filming the flow chart, showing them, hey, this is where I'm walking it down. But if it gets to a point where I can't get to a very clear decision, I'll guesstimate it, flip a coin, roll a die, and move on with my life because it'll make my video boring and it'll drive me nuts if I try to, get down to the minutia. It's just not worth that level of detail.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to have to be heading out. Harold.
What time is it there, Dan? Is it like 3 a.m.?
It's 10 p.m.
Do you know where your children are?
No.
Cece's still commenting. And you're ready to go to bed?
I'm ruined. I got up at 5 o'clock this morning.
So did I.
Okay. Yeah. What do you want me to say?
But it's also only 9 o'clock here.
5 a.m. than most people do all day.
But Harold, what a pleasure. What a pleasure.
Love you, Dan. Thanks for everything you do, and good seeing you. I appreciate your interest in allowing me to do this.
I'll see you soon.
Stay hard. Stay motivated.
Keep frosty.
Stay frosty.
Whatever.
the Marines in unison, man.
Take it easy, man. But Sean brings up a comment here. He says, keep an eye on Joe Dewhurst. This Pure Land, or the Pure Land, 15th century Japan, that has my interest right there. Yeah. Is in a good place testing-wise, and he has started on a coin based on the first war of Scottish independence, which both of those sound really awesome.
Absolutely.
Coin Braveheart?
Yeah, kind of. And coin Shogun or Last Samurai, whatever, you want to.
That would be fun.
Yeah,
I definitely go for that.
What I want to see is, we do have a coin game already about The Expanse, which was, Jeff Megelstein did that one. I'd like to see an official coin game, though, that tackled that a little bit more detail. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Are you talking about the TV show?
Mm-hmm.
They did a coin game on that, or someone ad hoc did or something?
It's not a coin game. It is a coin game, but it's coinish. It's asymmetric. And was it WizKids that did it? I can't remember now.
I don't know. Jeff Engelstein
was WizKids.
It was an interesting game, in my opinion. He wanted to do a coin game, but he also wanted to do one that was marketable, right? Because the company that asked him to do it wanted something that was more marketable than kind of the traditional coin stuff that we do. And I played it. I think it's interesting, but I don't think it's. I think each faction has a card with a special capability that's a little bit different, and that's where the asymmetry comes from. Mm-hmm. That game could have been so good with so much asymmetry, right? It really could have been awesome.
Yeah.
And so I was disappointed, and Jeff's awesome. So I'm sure he was constrained by his own commercial application.
Yeah. Well, here's a question for you, Harold. Now that you have been a designer and you've put out some games and all, how has designing changed your way of playing games? Does it make it, I've played with some designers that'll sit down, they'll look at a game, and you can see the wheels turning in their head. They're looking at it going, okay, what's the optimal play here? Boom. They're just trying to solve the puzzle immediately. And do you approach a game like that? Do you try to see the puzzle right away, or just do you absorb the experience and then try to figure it out as you go?
Yeah, I might have a little different answer, Mo. The thing that designing has given me an appreciation for is how much time these designers put into these games.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm much more tolerant, right? I try to be more tolerant and understanding of games that people put a ton of time into. And of course, I say that after I made fun of Jeff's game, but I think that it's amazing that nobody gets paid anything in this hobby, right? And companies don't make a lot of money. They're little businesses, and frankly, this is a terrible time for those companies. I pray that our favorite companies survive and thrive in this environment.
Well, to be fair about it, while yes, it's terrible for everyone, I think it's harder on the brick and mortar stores right now than it is on the actual publishing companies, because they can still push stuff out the door. Hopefully, if they've got online sales, which I think most of them do. But the stores themselves, like the places where we meet up to play these games, I really worry how many of them are going to weather this.
It's true.
Are they still going to be here at the end of the storm? My local store that I always promote on my channel, I've talked to them a couple times, just wishing them the best, and I know it's rough for them, and I'm just hoping that everything goes well for them during this. But there's not much else we can do.
Best thing we can do is as they open up, is go in there and buy some stuff. If you've been thinking about a game, go buy it there. Pay a few extra bucks and go buy it at the brick and mortar store if you want to have them stay in business.
I agree. I think it's going to be tough for the brick and mortar stores for sure. But the publishers have also paid a price in the cycle of getting games done and produced in China and back, right? For companies to do that. And they can't really staff their shops. People don't want to come in and risk their life for game sales, right? So depending on how long this lasts and how companies are cut back. The other thing is that there should be a demand impact. During the last financial crisis, there was a tremendous demand impact, and there are tons of people that losing their jobs that can't afford to lose their jobs, right?
Yeah.
And then a lot of people that are scared and don't want to spend the money on stuff. So who knows how that's going to play out. But I fear for the companies we love. I hope they're okay. I hope everything works out. But
along the lines of what you're saying, one of the trends that I've noticed, especially within the past year or two, is that sharp increase in price of a lot of games. They're easily pushing $100 a game now, not even ones that have miniatures in them. And I think due to this, we might see that reverse itself and go back to standees or games that don't have miniatures, or whatever cost-cutting measures they can take to bring games to a price point that is still profitable for the publisher, but people are actually willing to pay, because they might not be willing to buy the $150 game anymore.
Yeah.
Now they want something that's $50, but they still want a little bit of quality. I think we'll see a bigger push of smaller, more bite-sized games thanks to this.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch, and it'll be interesting to watch what clears Kickstarter for the next 6 months or a year. That'll start to give us a feel for how sensitive people are to this stuff and how interested they are in producing something under a different paradigm, where you see games that are simpler, but not tons of components.
Yeah.
Now
I did make an exception for Frosthaven. That one I backed. Because I love Gloomhaven.
I want to see from the audience here. You guys have been quiet. We've got some good comments. Like Blast Pop says, "Hi guys, I had several coin games. My local opponents won't play coin, so the bots are the way for me to play. I got frustrated with the bots and sold off the games, and that's a shame. It's understandable, but it's a shame. But what about playing all four sides? Or in the case of Colonial Twilight, playing the two sides. That's still an option. And I never felt cheated playing, multiple sides. I enjoy that. And that was one of the weirdest things, I think, for a lot of, hobby gamers to hear is, you play the game by yourself? It's like, what's the fun in that? It's like, try it and free your mind. Don't try to win. play the game and experience it and enjoy it. And then you can still try to win, but you're trying to win. You're kind of getting the benefit of, you have two games in one. I'm playing both sides. I'm trying to win from this side. I'm trying to win from that side. And you learn over time how to play competitive against yourself in a way that's fun, but you're really more about driving the narrative and just having a good time.
Yeah.
But I want to see from the audience some questions. So, because we're getting close to the end here, and I want to see some questions. If you guys want to,
anybody watching? Is my question, Mo.
I don't know. I think everybody left, so I guess no one wants a copy of Tank Duel. So I guess we can just sign out then, and no one wants a copy, right?
Oh, don't do that to him. Tank Duel's too good not to give
No,
that to somebody.
now there's people like, here, let me type some questions.
Yeah, I mean, Tank Duel is a good game, though. I mean, I gotta recommend it. Now, I'll put the same thing I said in my review, though. You don't necessarily buy it specifically just for its solitaire play, but if you have someone you're going to play it with, absolutely, hands down, definitely one to get. I'm not saying the solitaire is bad, but it's not its main function. It is very much a party tank game.
It's a social game. You have to you have to be with multiple people to really enjoy it. And that's why, the first time I said it, I think it was on the show, I said, it's basically, it's a war game. It's a party game for wargamers, and somebody was like, well, no, I was like, no, that's not meant in a bad way. That's actually a good thing. It's a party game for wargamers. It's a bunch of wargamers hanging out at the end of the night or beginning of the day, whatever. You're having a social, light, good time. You're not having to dig into too much minutia and stuff like that. You're just having fun, talking trash, and everyone's just laughing, and that's the best part about it.
The thing of it is I almost wish they wouldn't release a sequel, but do like tank packs instead, because that game is just built to have, here's 6 extra tanks, or here's 10 extra tanks in a pack or something that you could buy for 10 or 20 bucks, whatever, the cost would be, instead of having to reinvest in a whole new game. Have, this is the American tank pack, this is the British tank pack, this is more Germans or whatever it is. I mean, that's all you need. The base gameplay is there. You just need the tank boards themselves,
Yeah, because you don't need maps.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's part of the fun of playing tank games. It's just a huge variety of tanks over that tech tree of World War II, right?
Yeah. And Ken says, what period of history that there ought to be more war games on? What's everybody's thoughts on that?
I'd have to think about that one for a second.
American Revolution.
Yeah. Well, I knew what your answer was going to be.
I love modern games. I've always loved modern conflict. Mm-hmm. So, I guess I was playing a lot in the late 70s, early 80s. So all the Cold War conflicts were awesome. I loved the Arab-Israeli wars. It was so interesting, right? With all those new techs and I'd like to see more games on 2020, 2025 conflict, right?
Yeah. No, that would be really cool. I prefer modern personally. I know that there's a lot of people, they love, ancients and things like that. To me, when it comes to older history, there are periods of it, like, the Japanese, that we're talking about, the Japanese game before, that era interests me. The American Civil War, obviously, American Revolution. The American Civil War does not interest me. The American Revolution does. The Civil War, not as much, but World War I, I'm just like, I just go right over that. World War II, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm interested, but there's so much, and I do love World War II games, but you get modern conflict, and it's, I don't know, especially what if, World War III, the what if 85, 87 World War IIIs, I love that. And then I love the whole, Next War series. I think Mitch has just really hit on a fantastic series there. And that's, off of Gene design, which we were talking about before. You were saying about, Gene's design capabilities. I think it's a lot of fun because you get to explore what would happen in these things that we, in the real world now, or in the next year or two.
Right.
Yeah. I gotta say, for me, I'd like to see more pirates in like the Age of Sail. I know that's kind of crazy, but I would like to see something to where you're sailing your ship and you can maybe expand your fleet and go after the British or the Spanish or the French, or even control their forces. But there's not a whole lot that covers I think that time period. Now there's games from that time period, but maybe not set in the Age of Sail that have like pirates, and there's one that I can think of that has a couple of different editions, but not too much with actual pirates and gold and all that cool stuff. I'd really like to see more of that.
Those are great things to play with. I've always thought that games have the potential to be have a component of role playing in them. So in my game Campaigns of 1777, there's an optional rule that if two generals meet and one beats the other, then that general becomes the what's the term? Geez, my game, and I can't think of the term. Nemesis.
Badass.
He becomes the nemesis, right? And then every time they play, he has an advantage. Every time they fight, and there are like 8 other characteristics that you can gain through combat, right? You can be the master of siege, or the master of busting a siege, or
I was going to say, do we have to pull out the rule book?
There you go. Yeah, we can look. Yeah, it's one of the optional rules there at the end.
Nice.
And I did that because I think we should be able to do things in a game that make it more like a role playing game. Mm-hmm. And what you mentioned was perfect, Nate. What if you had, what if you played the role of a captain and you had a ship and you cruised around and you did stuff, right? That allowed you to gain fame and gold, and pirates did all sorts of stuff, right? They were merchants and they were they were pirates sometimes, and they did all sorts of different things. And I mean, what about what are the submarine games? The
Hunters. The Hunters.
Silent
Victory. What if you did that with a pirate ship, right?
Oh, I'd go off for that one in a heartbeat.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Yeah,
that would be cool.
Now Volko has a game with Blackbeard coming up.
Blackbeard, yeah.
And I, he did it once, and he set it up, and it was great, and I played it and I loved it. And then he said, "Well, Harold loves it, so I'm going to change it completely." So he changed it completely. But that's a fun game too, and it's the hunt for Blackbeard, right?
Yes, hunt for Blackbeard. Yeah.
One player plays Blackbeard, and you're running around trying to do your thing, and then the other one is the crew that hunted him off the coast of Virginia and the Carolinas.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because there's little breadcrumbs left behind that you have to track, and then you try to surmise where Blackbeard's going to move to next and stuff, and then you can say, okay, is he there? It's not whack-a-mole. It's smarter than that, but it's not. You definitely can tell where he's going if you pay attention, and not always, because if you have a smart player and he can kind of throw you off a little bit, you can miss him. But it is designed to keep you in it. It's not like one of those, wow, there's a good chance I'm not going to find him because it's luck. Nope. There's deduction in it, which is really cool.
The hidden movement type stuff.
Yes. And then Mark,
you played Berg's Blackbeard. Patrick Garrett brings that up.
I haven't played that one. I think that might be the one I was thinking of, though. I had a couple of different editions. Like the first one was Hex Encounter, and then the second one went to like an area movement type. I can't remember which, but it's hard to get the first one, and I wanted the one that was like hex based locations versus just go to this port, go to this port, go to this port.
Right.
I have the second edition. I don't have the first, and the second edition was the one there was pretty heavy restructuring, I believe, in that, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
So yeah. And then I'm trying to get these other questions in here because now everybody's throwing out a bunch of questions.
So how are you going to do the giveaway thing? Do you have like a random number thing, or
we're just going to figure it out?
Are we gonna
Mark says
scissors?
Kind of, sort of. What do you guys think of the solo narrative games, Hunters, that you were just bringing up? What do you guys think of those?
I enjoyed Hunters. I thought those are. I think it's an interesting path. John Butterfield did a game called Ambush when he was at SPI.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. And
yes,
it's kind of a solo game, but very much narrative oriented.
Why has that not gotten? What is the whole story with the ownership on that? Is that Hasbro owned or something where no one's actually reprinted that?
SPI, yeah, it might. It might be. I think if you talk to the guys that worked on it, and which is Butterfield and Mark Herman are the two that I know, they talk about how painful a process it was. But with modern technology, right, you got to figure you could, put together a spreadsheet and just link everything up, and it would be easier. I'd love to see him do it. Maybe I'll try to talk him into it. Maybe I could be the developer.
There you go.
We've mentioned that before, actually, a couple times, that we'd like to see a modern version of Ambush that has like an app based with it. So instead of you move into this hex, this is the same thing that will always happen when you move into this hex. Some random draw behind the scenes with the app that, no, this happens. A sniper pops up, a landmine popped up, nothing popped up. Joe Schmo pooped himself, whatever it is.
You need to get the
that
U-boat.
would be great.
You have to get the U-boat guys to do that one, that hybrid board game app thing.
I loved U-boat.
That's what I'm saying. We got to get those guys. Those guys who would, that sounds like right up their alley right there. And we've got
So Sean says, what game could we get? What game would I like to author if we could wipe the author from the earth, cleanse the world of. I don't know. It probably a lot. Twilight Struggle would be one of them. I admire that game so much, but I admire what Volko's done with coins. So Andy and Abyss, and good luck getting rid of Volko. And then the great Mark Herman, right? What he did with Washington's War is so innovative, and he does that all the time, right? That's just standard stuff for him. The Churchill game is fantastic. I think that's a treat to play, and his you talked about how many World War II games there are. It's tons of them, and he created a World War II game that was different than anything we'd ever played before.
And that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
We got to sit down with Mark Herman again at some point, because the first time I got to meet him, I was still so new and young and all this that I just kind of stared at him open mouth, like, it's a name I heard a lot. I'm just going to sit here and be.
That was fun.
It was fun for you. You went through a bottle of Crown.
Well, yeah, that's always fun. But that was at WBC, and that was one of those, hey, you know what? We should get everybody together for a chat. So it was, Mark and Uwe and Dave Heath and you, me, and then Grant Alexander came in. And a little bit later, I think about half bottle away, and Uwe and me I think we just kind of crushed that bottle pretty fast, and it was fun, and it went on for a while. I mean, I think a little longer than we all expected, but it was a lot of fun.
No, that was good.
All we got to do is give a mic to ask a question, give a mic to Mark, and he's going to tell you great stories.
Well, it raises the question, why am I on here instead of Mark Herman? So you guys need to get Mark. And
no, you weren't there at WBC. Otherwise, we would have gotten you onto the show.
That's right.
Mo?
And
oh, my goodness.
There you are, buddy. You dropped
weird.
out on us there for a sec.
That was weird.
No, there are some names that just are known in the industry, and I heard them very quickly when I first started coming around and getting into the hobby a few years back, and of course Butterfield, Mark Herman, but you were there too, Harold.
You're very sweet to say that, Nate. I know you're not sweet, but you're sweet to say that.
That's sweet guy.
You guys have to go back and watch that piece that Dan did with Volko, because about halfway through Dan runs out of questions. And he starts this weird line of questioning about how would you track down a guy?
Yeah, and then I'll snipe you.
And then at the end, I just snipe him.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's track him down before you can snipe him anyway, right?
Exactly. Well, Dan, he's got a different perception on what people do and how things work, and I'll just snipe him. That's like
I love
Call
him.
of Duty.
He's perfect for the hobby, and he's perfect for what he does. And I love everything about Dan. So I don't mean any of this. I don't mean to be negative about him. And when I tease him, it's out of love, because I dig what he does.
Oh yeah. And here's a great question.
Teasing Dan is just good fun.
Yeah. It is definitely is. Here's a great question from Trevor Just. Harold and guys, what game would you like to see go to iOS or Steam? Labyrinth is just releasing. Gimpy, you go first.
Well, the one that I wanted I found it on Steam, which was Twilight Struggle. So, well, not Steam, iOS.
Mm-hmm.
So I got it on there, but I don't know. I don't do a whole lot of digital, I've just gotten into it, so I've been doing a lot of the Lock and Load Tactical Digital here recently, and won the Victory and Glory, which is the Civil War one,
Mm-hmm.
which doesn't have the actual board game component to it, but it's as close to a board game video game as you can get without actually having the board game component of it. But I don't know. I like having the components in my hand, right? I like to feel it. So for me, that experience of opening up the box and smelling the counters and pulling out the maps and me doing it so the wife doesn't tear up my maps like she's done before. I'm not joking on that one, Harold. She was filming a video for me once, and it was a compass game. I remember that. And she starts to unfold the map, and she's doing it wrong, and you hear the rip. And she's like,
Oh,
oh,
no.
oh, I'm so sorry. And then she turns it and rips it again. Throw the other direction. I just had to laugh about it. I'm like, well, I'm keeping that one. That's never going to be resold.
Isn't
Laugh
that
or cry.
And you know, it's funny too that it affects guys like you and me so much emotionally when you do something like that to a game. At least it does me, and I'm sad by it. I'm in my office and I have a few stacks of games at different places, and my wife comes in and talks to me, and when she's talking to me, she puts her elbow up on the games, and I'm like, you can't do that. Stop. And she's like, what the hell are you talking about? Why can't I put my elbow there? And it's right. It's a weird obsession, but many of us have it.
So now every time she comes in, boom, hands up around the game or the elbow or something like that, right?
I think she does it now because she knows it bugs me.
Yeah.
Which she does. There's a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what wives are good for.
That's right.
So Harold, your turn on this question. What would you say? I know your answer will probably be one thing, but
it is liberty or death, man. So those Playdeck guys are here in town, and I'm on them all the time. I try to take them to lunch. They end up paying, which is even better. But
nice.
they're wonderful guys. You know, they have to make an economic decision,
mm-hmm.
and I think the American Revolution is a tremendous economic decision. But you know, they kind of like games that like Labyrinth have follow-ons. So
mm-hmm.
once they set up the system, they can sell another game around the follow, right? I mean, that just makes sense, and that's better economically for them than the American Revolution, which doesn't really morph into anything.
What if they did Liberty or Death? They would build the coin engine, which they already kind of built with Labyrinth, so it would not be a big, step for them to run through the whole entire coin.
I think their view is it is, Mo, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I think their view is that that's not a convertible
mm-hmm.
issue, right? But you know, they're considering a lot of things. They're considering Tank Duel, and you know, they need to do games where they can sell a lot of units because the price is so super low and their costs are so front loaded. So
yeah.
So, how about you? What's your answer?
Isn't the production easier though for something like that because the digital art already exists, right? So like Liberty or Death, you already have the art for the counters, the maps, the cards, and all that stuff. So that takes that aspect of production out, doesn't it?
Yeah, that aspect is this, but the development of everything else is that. You have to get
incorporating all of the rules into a system.
Yeah,
is really I think that's where they spend all their time.
Okay.
Then the multiplayer component.
Not a computer guy, so
then a multiplayer component. If you're going to have your own multiplayer, or you're going to be on Steam, you can use their Steam, their Steam multiplayer component. So that makes it a little easier. But there's a lot of different things. Software development is not as simple, cut and dried as some people may think. But my thing would be coin, for the simple fact that, I've got two. Coin would be the first one. Any coin, obviously Liberty or Death is one I'd want to see the most. But I think if you built the coin engine and you could just go through all the iterations, that would be great. But the other thing I would like to see them do is somehow also churn out a bot that you can use with the board game. So you could have one of those. Obviously, you'd have to cook the books a little bit and build the deck, or you could just run the deck from the application itself and then have them be one of the players. But how do you match it up with the software itself on the board? You'd have to keep the board state equal to the software board state, which would be a little work. But they've got these new technologies out there where they're kind of tying in software and the hardware itself, the board game, to where they're kind of seamless. So that'd be kind of neat if you could do that. That's not today or tomorrow, but that's something to think about. And then the other one, obviously, if it could be done, is I'd love to see the next War Series translated to software, to a digital format.
Yeah.
So Mike's saying the AI is the hard thing.
I have to take his word on it. I don't know. I was just figuring with all the art assets done, it should cut the cost some.
And then Sean says, Mo, there is an app similar to that called Scythekick that does something like that for Scythe. Huh? Interesting. Well, I mean, Sean has been, just jamming out these questions tonight. So I think Sean should win the copy of Tank Duel.
Very good.
Sean.
Well done, Sean.
Congrats,
well done,
buddy.
Sean. And that's we appreciate everybody, contributing in the chat. This is a show for all of us. It's not just, us up here on camera. It's everybody in the chat as well. And we really appreciate you guys taking the time out tonight to come by, hang out, and chat with us. And, we're going to close the show out here. I think we've kept Harold long enough, and I don't want to, start talking about CIA and how you're going to track them down, and, we'll just snipe them.
Look, I've enjoyed it with you guys. I appreciate it. I watch you guys with great interest. As you publish, I'm usually watching the recorded show, so I can't make comments. If there's something I feel strongly about, I usually write down some curse words and send them to Mo. But it's been good fun. I appreciate what you guys do, and I'll continue to watch all the stuff you post. So keep it up.
Yeah, no, definitely appreciate you being on, and hopefully in the future you can come back and we'll chat some more. Hopefully when South China Sea especially comes out.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. And Sean, if you would send me via message, I guess we see each other in Twitter, but if you'd send me your address, I will put it in a box, and then once I decide it's safe to go to the post office, I will send it to you.
Nate, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say thanks for giving me a new little saying. I'll just snipe him is going to get added to the repertoire. I've got one with the wife we joke about from my boot camp days, where one of our drill instructors said, "Don't go telling your mommies and your daddies that you're getting shot at, because you're not." And that's one of our little things. Like if the kids do something stupid, we're always like, "'Cause you're not,"
Nice.
So getting sniped is now going to get added to the repertoire in honor of Harold and Dan.
That's excellent. I love it.
Well, we've got, already games out there from Harold. We've got Liberty or Death, which we were just talking about. Campaigns of 1777, which is Strategy and Tactics issue number 316. And then we have the upcoming Flashpoint South China Sea, which is still on P500. So don't miss out. Get out there to GMT Games and get in your P500 order if you've not done that. And where can everybody find you as far as your website and also your Twitter, Harold?
Yeah, so conflictsimulations.com is my website where I put the notes for all my podcasts, links to the podcasts. So that's one place to find me. And then Harold Buchanan, too, is my Twitter ID, and that's where I spend a good bit of my time.
Well, good deal. You, Nate, your turn. Where can everybody find you?
The Gimpy Gamer at yahoo.com. That's the email address, and it's in the description of all my videos. I'm not on Twitter because I have a life and I can't stand Twitter. I hate that crap. I'm on Facebook, but it's just my name, Nate. So you guys are free to message me on that. I strangely enough, for being one of the younger war gamers, I am not that overly interested in social media. I don't want to get overly involved with it. The only reason I created the YouTube channel was because I got into wargaming. So.
Right. Well, the Wargame channel, the YouTube channel, Twitter is, my primary. I'm on Facebook, but I really don't really use it that much. I mean, I kind of do to keep in touch with some people and to see what people are posting, but I'm not really that big on it. I'm more onto the Twitter and, the YouTube channel as well. But I think we're going to call it a night, guys. And like I said before, really appreciate everybody coming in on the audience tonight and participating in the chat. We had a great time with you guys. And Harold, once again, thank you very much for taking the time to come in and hang out with us for a couple hours.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Good night, guys. We'll see you in a couple weeks.